What's good, y'all? My name is Dylan Green, and this is Real Notes, a space dedicated to blurring the cultural and artistic lines between rap and film. I'm here to chop it up with everyone from rappers and producers to journalists and video directors about their relationship to movies and how, if at all, film inspires their craft. My guest this week is journalist, author, record label head, and founder of the blog Passion of the Weiss, Jeff Weiss. We spoke about a lot, including Succession, The Sopranos, the lack of comedies in modern Hollywood, why Field of Dreams makes him cry, his extensive history as a music journalist, and the value of using POW and his record label POW Recordings to put on for the best of hip-hop and journalism's rising talent. Come fuck with us. What's cracking, everybody? Welcome back to Real Notes. I don't know what episode this is anymore. I stopped counting. I feel like I say that every time. I gotta stop. I just got to do the thing. But either way, hi, I'm Dylan. I'm CineMasai. I'm all over the place. I do a lot of things, and those are names that I have. And I'm talking to somebody today who also does a lot of things. He does the most things of anybody in this entire game that I know. It's kind of wild. Man's a writer, he's an editor, he runs a magazine and a website, theLAnd and Passion of the Weiss. He runs a record label. I'm not gonna list all the shit that he does, but one of the hardest working people in music, one of our best writers. It's the man, fucking Jeff Weiss is here, man. What's up, Jethro? How you feeling?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
No, of course. Thank you for coming on. I know you're all over the place and doing 80 billion things. So you taking time to talk to me means the world.
Yeah, no, of course. No, sorry. The last time I was doing a story on the DA, which was, so that's the next issue of theLAnd, which comes out it'll probably come out on the time this drops. So yeah, it's been that we just put that to bed, and now I'm starting to, get back to my book. And so, yeah, we'll see.
Right. Incredible.
How this goes,
Man, that's incredible. So yeah, obviously I want to get into as much of this stuff as I can, but let's start with the first question I ask everybody who comes on here. What was the last movie or TV show you watched that you have a strong opinion about?
I'm rewatching Succession for the fourth time. So that's probably the thing that I'm strong. I'm pretty obsessed with Succession. Have other people discussed their love of Succession?
Not yet.
So it's probably, I was talking about this with Paul Thompson yesterday, and we were both through the first 23 episodes, I think that Succession is the best television show ever made.
Wow.
During the pandemic, it's I tended to be more of a movie person than a TV person. I grew up in a house where we didn't really have cable till I was older, and we never had the HBO Showtime kind of cable stuff. So I never really and then prestige TV really started when I was at college or in my 20s, and I just never really so I never had seen The Wire. I had never seen The Sopranos. I had never seen Twin Peaks. And I was all right, I'm gonna watch them all during the pandemic. And yeah, so I now have seen all the things you're supposed to have seen. So now I am not as dumb as I once was, although still kind of dumb. But yeah, I think I think the Twin Peaks is probably overall my favorite, even though I was never really a David Lynch person. I guess that would be the other thing that I would say is I just watched Twin Peaks: The Return, which I had never seen. I mean, I'd never seen any of the Twin Peaks stuff. I watched Mulholland Drive when I was in college once, and I just thought it was the most, of course I was oh, this is so pretentious, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Insufferable. How can anyone think this is good? I'm so much smarter than all these nominally intelligent people that think this is the greatest thing ever. And of course, I just didn't get it because I was 19 or 20 or something. And also David Lynch requires a certain buy-in. I think you kind of almost have to have seen Twin Peaks to kind of get it.
More or less, yeah.
I love noir. So, Twin Peaks really spoke to me because it's almost this Douglas Sirk meets 1950s noir, which I thought was really cool. But even the first season, I liked it, but I wasn't obsessed with it. And it really wasn't until I kept going through it and watching The Return. I mean, and that honestly is probably as good as any art film I've ever seen in my life. I mean, that, if anything, that's Louis Bonwell or Dolly, surrealism. I thought that was incredible. But Succession to me is almost like the wisest bit of advice I've ever gotten in my life was I interviewed Paul Thomas Anderson once, and he was like, everything should be funny. And I was like, what do you mean everything should be funny? He goes, everything should be funny. And I was like, I thought about it and I was like, yeah, you're right. Everything should be funny. That's totally right. Like that is 100% accurate.
Nah,
And
yeah.
so Succession for me is like King Lear if it was Arrested Development. So it's like Shakespeare meets Arrested Development. It's the best. I love it. It's so good. And the acting is also probably, other than The Wire. I mean, I think Succession's acting is better than like any show I've ever seen, probably, to be quite honest with you. But The Wire's probably was the close second because I mean they're all like they get a bunch of like, you know what I mean? It's like McNulty like being British and like it's the same
Right,
thing.
yeah.
How is this guy British? And Succession's like that too. It's like, have you seen it?
No, I haven't. Not yet. I'm gonna get grilled for it, but I haven't seen it yet.
You're missing out.
Yeah,
So,
I'm like the I feel like oh, sorry.
no. Go on.
I was just gonna say I feel like I'm the only person on the internet who hasn't started watching Succession yet. And I'm a big Brian Cox fan. So I'm really depriving myself. I know, but
I've never seen anything with him in it actually, and it was like funny where I was like talking again yesterday, and I was like, it's crazy because it's like him and like of like those actors of that generation. You're like, it's like him and Anthony Hopkins, and then like Paul was like, well, they were like both up. They were like the two Hannibals, and I was like, Brian Cox was Hannibal. Like I was like, I had no. I'm like kind of oblivious on certain things. You know what I mean? I don't think I've ever seen Silence of the Lambs in full. I've seen parts of it, but I've never seen the whole thing.
you know what's crazy? I've never seen White Chicks in full. I know Silence of the Lambs and White Chicks are what?
Same. Same.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never seen those in full.
Like the first time I ever saw White Chick, like I saw it in a theater with one of my best friends, and it was one of my best friends and my dad, and like my grandmother went into the hospital like halfway through the movie at like the all is lost moment when the two brothers are like, "Oh, you're stupid," and they have like the breakup. Like we had to leave right after that. So since then, I've seen the whole movie, like just never in one sitting. Like I've seen it in parts.
In hindsight, the Wayans brothers were on a really weird run there for a while with White Chicks. They did Juana Man, right? Wasn't that
They
them?
did you want to, man? Yeah,
Little Man too? Wasn't that them as well?
that was them. Yep.
The weirdest thing about Little Man, and this is like one of those things where like a New York Magazine Vulture column thing that I wouldn't write because like it's such a third rail topic for obvious reasons, but like I think a lot about like R. Kelly's first trial and like where the attorneys were like, well, like, isn't it possible that someone replaced R. Kelly's face on that person's body in the video, like in the movie Little Man? And like that was like their excuse was like it was Little Man. Like they're like, oh yeah, because technology is possible because of the film Little Man. And like just to think of like how insane you'd have to be of an attorney to be like, yeah, okay, good, Little Man, we're bringing this tomorrow to the courtroom. And it was the American judicial system is fucked, and needless to say, you know,
like,
but
yeah, circa 2000s American law, like just like that R. Kelly money was singing all sorts of shit. I can't even imagine how much his lawyers were getting paid to defend that piece of shit. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's amazing that he was able to like get free that first time, honestly, because it's like you're literally on videotape. I mean,
right.
yeah, it's I mean, justice was served. I mean, like he did get locked. I mean, it took a long time, but you know, eventually. Yeah, I mean, it. Like I almost think that like most of the time, if you have money, I mean, look at the same thing with like Robert Durst, right? Like that guy, like
Right.
I mean, that guy's the most like. How do you look at Robert Durst and be like, oh yeah, he's innocent? Like you're like this guy. You just look at a photo of him, you're like, nah, he's guilty. Like I don't believe that you can like think that somebody's guilty based on looking at them, except in the case of Robert Durst, where I'm like,
right,
he's guilty of everything. Like.
Yeah, he's just got that kind of face. Nah, I get it.
Also, like you show up with the fright wig, you're like, you're guilty, dog. Like we see,
like
your eyes are too crazy.
Come on. You already know. That's too funny. But I promise I'm gonna start watching Succession as soon as I run through like the 50 or 60 other things that I gotta watch. Because
you'll get to it when you get to it. I watched The Sopranos for the first time in 2020. You get to things when you get to things. You got to leave yourself these like little Easter eggs later in life. So you're like, oh, cool. Like I never saw this or read this or, you know, I like that. Whereas like, I never understood the people that were always like, it's always like a type of bro where they're like, dude, you haven't seen this? What's wrong with you? And then you're like, I don't know, man. Like, I'll get to things when I get to things. It's like not a
Yeah.
mine. It's a lacuna, and maybe it'll eventually make more sense. Like, I don't know. I probably shouldn't have seen Mulholland Drive when I was like 18 or 19. So I would have like not, you know what I mean? So I would have been like, oh, you'll wait to this when you get to this. I still haven't read Ulysses.
Me
And
either.
yeah, I don't think anybody has, but I'll eventually read it, barring my untimely death. And I've never read Infinite Jest. I'll eventually read that. I'm not really in a rush to read 1,000-page books, but eventually there'll be another pandemic or something, and I'll get to it.
Yeah, that's what these things are all about. Just taking time to like fucking mainline culture for
Yeah.
2 weeks. Like, yeah. So like it seems like you already have a pretty expansive and intimate relationship with film. So like what's the first movie experience you can remember having? Like it could be at the theater, your cousin's house, it could be anywhere. Like the first time you remember seeing a movie.
I mean, I don't know what the first time would be. I mean, but like I definitely, like, for me, like I will always have a really deep and unabiding love of like 80s comedies. Like that, those are the movies I remember watching like in my childhood. So like, I mean, I loved watching Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I thought that was like the greatest movie. I still kind of think it's the greatest movie ever. I haven't seen the new one, but like that was another thing. I'm like, oh, I'll eventually watch it. But I love that. That to me was like, it was like everything I wanted in a movie, because it was like funny, goofy, like West Coast San Gabriel Valley stoners. Obviously, I kind of talk like that. I thought Keanu Reeves was like a great actor. It turned out that was his entire life was Ted. But like also traveling through history. I loved history when I was a little kid. I still do. So that was, I mean, I loved like Major League. That to me was like everything for me, because I loved baseball and cursing. And I thought that I thought Charlie Sheen was super cool. And Ferris Bueller for sure. I remember watching when I was super young. My dad, like, like all like those TBS comedies. Like I definitely like ran through all of those. Those are the ones I really remember. And like I guess the Disney, your Disney movies of like Pinocchio or like Alice in Wonderland, those type of things. But yeah, it would definitely be like, I mean, there was a period where like Wayne's World, I mean, like to me was, I didn't quite get it at the time, but it kind of, those kind of things to me are, they never, the one thing that always makes me upset, well, they don't even exist. They don't even exist anymore. So that makes me the most upset. Like, like one of the things I always wanted to do was make, and I wrote a few scripts like, in like about like 10 years ago, and got like an agent, and like thought I was like for sure going to sell them, because I was like, these are really funny. And no, of course I didn't sell them, because you don't sell anything that's good in Hollywood, or if you do sell, it doesn't get made. You only can sell a script that like gets, you can only get a script made if it's like, I mean, I knew a guy that sold a script called, I mean, this is everything you need to know. I knew a guy who sold a script called Goliath, right? And it was like the biblical tale of Goliath told from the perspective of Goliath. And you're like, that's actually the kind of dumb movie that Hollywood would totally make. And like, they didn't even do that. And you're like, that screams, we will make this movie. But yeah, I mean, I love what was the $40 million comedy, like a Zoolander. I loved Zoolander. That was like, I was obsessed with that. Like those movies, I mean, Ben Stiller, I was obsessed with. I mean, he was one of my favorite, Wilson I loved. They don't make those movies anymore. And
yeah,
that
not really.
And well, it's obvious why, because they don't scale to, like, comedy doesn't translate in other countries, because like that's the beauty. It's like regional rap, right? Like that's why those are like my favorite things, because like comedy specific, like it's depending on like all these like in jokes of a culture, and like rap is like kind of regional rap is sort of like that. It's like it's not supposed to be outside of that region. Comedy, the region being America theoretically, but it doesn't translate. You're not going to make Zoolander and it's going to make like $300 billion in China or something, but like whatever Marvel movie will, of course. And so that's a real heartbreaking thing to me. Like the fact that they'll never make, they don't make sports movies like that anymore, because
not really.
You know what I mean? Like, again, like those are mid-range movies. And yeah, it's kind of killed, I don't, the other problem I would say is, comedies probably, I mean, I'm not about to sit here and be like cancel. Like, I'm not going to go on that tirade, but I do think comedy's not funny. Like, I don't think much is funny right now other than, and that, I don't think that's necessarily because of like the cultural element of it. I just don't think like, I was thinking about this the other day actually, because I was like it was talking about like the death of culture, right? Like, and all these things, and like I forget what it was. It was like music or film, or like why there aren't as many good things made. And of course, like there always are going to be good things made, but why there aren't like the number that cut through. And I honestly think it's because there are not these like support systems. Like we always blame it on the artists, but like in reality, it's like more often the support systems. It's like, why is there not good journalism? Because no one's
Right.
fucking paying for it. No, there are not alt weeklies and daily newspapers left to nurture talent. Why are there not great movies? Because no one will make a $40 million movie that are often great because they want to make a $400 million movie that is often terrible. And like, cool, like I've seen a few Marvel movies, like Iron Man was good. Like I get it. Like I'm not saying no, there shouldn't be those movies, but it's weird. Like I remember being a kid and being like, why are there no superhero movies? They should make a lot of superhero movies. I remember distinctly having that thought at like 8 or 9 years old, because like the only superhero movies were like the Batman movies.
Right.
And like, now it's like, why are they only making superhero movies? I mean, and granted, I mean, yeah, like you still get a Wes Anderson will be allowed to make his, I want to see his new movie. I mean, Paul Thomas Anderson has that new movie coming out. I'm sure it'll be great. Tarantino still makes his movies, but like those are like 3 people. And where is that next generation of talent that's being nurtured the same way? Maybe I'm out of it. Like, I mean, I'm not like, I would never pretend to be like the biggest expert on film or whatever. I love it, but I'm not like, I would never call myself like, I'm not like one of those people that sits there and has, I don't have a Criterion Collection subscription. I should, but like,
Right.
I just haven't. But yeah, I think there's not really the support of things. Like, I don't think comedy movies get the kind of support. I don't think TV shows necessarily. I mean, there's no good sitcoms left, like there's not very many funny things. I mean, when I think about the things that have been the funniest over the last few years, I'm like, Succession, I think is really funny. Nathan For You, I thought was really funny, but again, that's like a gonzo sketch comedy kind of thing.
Yeah. Same with like I Think You Should Leave, which I love
Yeah,
personally.
it's funny. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it's kind of stupid, but that's the point. It's I
Yeah.
like it. I got put on it recently. I thought it was funny. But yeah, like it's like I want more. Like, I mean, I actually kind of like Schitt's Creek, to be honest with you. Like people like hate it. Like my
I love Schitt's Creek. I don't care. I
I
think
was
it's great.
surprised. I was surprised how much I liked it. Like I was like,
Same.
guess like kind of, well, I think Eugene Levy is really funny, and I think like his son is funny, and I thought the acting was good. I thought like Alexis was, I don't know, I mean, what's it called? The thing is, like, if people are talking shit, you're like, I don't know, how do you not like Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara? Like those are 2, I mean, yeah, like I love Guffman, like, the Christopher Guest movies. Those to me are like my favorite things in the world. But
Same.
again, where's the Christopher Guest? Like they don't, because again, the talent isn't cultivated like that. It's like, I thought like Sandberg and those guys, and obviously they did executive produce I Think You Should Leave, and I think Akiva and Yorma directed them, and those, I think they're really talented guys. But like, I shouldn't say this publicly because I know one of the screenwriters of Palm Springs, and he's a great guy and very talented guy, but I did not care for that movie. And it just was like one of those things where everyone like loved that movie, and I was like, ugh. And like that to me is like the kind of mid comedies that they make now, and that kind of, like, I just want something like, where is like a Zoolander could never get made. Like even, like in the same thing, like the Apatow guys, that was like really the last rush, I thought, of the movies that I genuinely like, because I like I love like a serious drama, but like, like, I don't know, I'm not in the mood to watch that shit. Like I usually watch stuff late at night, like at like 10 o'clock,
Yeah.
11 o'clock. And I'm like, I don't have the patience. Like I've been trying to watch A Walk on the Wild Side. Are you familiar with that movie?
Yeah. Is that wait. Oh no. Sorry. I'm thinking of A Trip to the Moon. Completely different movie. I don't know this one.
Yeah, it's like a I think it's Burt Lancaster's like the star of it. It's based on this Nelson Algren novel. I think from the 60s. Jane Fonda's in. It was like one of her first roles. But like, I've been trying to watch it now for the last 3 weeks after I finished a reread of the book, and like I don't motivate to watch it because I'm like, oh, I'll just watch Succession or Curb, or the new season of Curb. So yeah, I just think that like I mean, it's such a trite take, but I mean, capitalism did kind of like this version of capitalism. I'm not like one of those people that thinks like, oh, I mean, capitalism can have value. It's not, you know what I mean? Because it just became when capitalism became unchecked greed. It's like when it became everything. Like, I mean, it's always, I guess, been rooted in the sense of exploitation. But when it became, it's just like everything in American life. That's why The Sopranos, right, has a relevance right now, because it's just like it like even the mob couldn't get over. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like I
Mm-hmm.
watched The Wire, right? And it's like this country used to make things. Now it's about putting our hand in someone else's pocket. You know, and that's like kind of what film in a lot of ways. You know, it's like good stuff is always going to slip through, but it's like, you know, it's you see it in sports. You know, where it's like, right? They're talking. I don't know if you watch baseball.
Not really. Nah.
Like one of the things they did over the last few years is something called the bullpen game, right? And so the bullpen game is where you don't have like one starting pitcher. You put a bunch of relief pitchers in, and they all pitch like 1 or 2 innings, right? And so you have 5 or 6 pitchers or 7 pitchers, even more, in the course of a 9 inning game. Right? That fucking sucks though. Nobody wants to watch that shit. Like it's like I don't want to like I like the NBA still, but like also like analytics has fucked it up. Like I'm sorry, like I don't need to watch like corner threes all day long. Like it's not that fun for me. Like it's cool. I still enjoy it. I still like watch the NBA almost every night. But like what's up with the like I want like aesthetics, I want style. There's so much more than money. There's so much more than winning. There is like something deeper, and that is something that is permanently lost, I think, and that I think infects all aspects of society. So I think like there's no way to talk about anything without kind of addressing like the one thing, which is like we're all a bunch of whores, you know, and we kind of have to be now because we can't, you know, no disrespect to whores or anything. I mean, there's a, you know, but
Of course.
I don't mean that as a pejorative. I'm not referring to, yeah, just, you know, you have to be clear in 2021. I'm not referring to sex workers anyway. I'm referring to the fact that we all have to do a bunch of things that we hate, because there is not like the chance to do really good work. There is, but it's increasingly rare. You know what I mean? It's like it, even like with the book that, you know, like I'm like writing, where it's like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm super immensely grateful to have my publisher and my editor. They are amazing people, who like are really taking a chance on me. But like, you know, I'm sure I could have sold it to a bunch of other people, you know, because Britney Spears is sort of like, if I was like, I want to write some like tabloid bullshit, like exploited Britney Spears thing with a little hint of serious music criticism, I'm sure I could have gotten a 6-figure advance, because that's the worst version of what I wanted to do, you know? And I think everything is like, you know, it's like, I mean, like today, like we're having this interview, it's like, you know, going off on another rant, but like, you know, Dave Portnoy, did you see the thing where it's like Dave Portnoy is like, you know, basically, and it's like, yeah, of course, Dave Portnoy is exactly what we thought he is, and he will not get canceled, because there is like, you know, it's that old quote of like, no one ever lost money betting on the lack of intelligence of the American people. And
Right.
it's like sad, like you're like a guy like Dave Portnoy is always going to win in this country.
Yeah.
And no matter how many evil things he does, or how terrible Barstool is, and it's just, that is, you know, and it used to be, I think that there were like, you know, Barstool was like, there were more winners, I suppose. You know, that's kind of what it feels
Yeah.
like you look at it and it's like, obviously you write for Pitchfork now, right? But like there should be 4 pitchforks, and there aren't 4 pitchforks, and like nothing has replaced Pitchfork, or then that excuse me, I don't mean replaced, but like come along to add in addition to Pitchfork.
Yeah, there's no next generation,
Yeah,
is what you're
exactly.
saying. Yeah, yeah.
Pitchfork did the Rolling Stone, where you're like, okay, it's, you know what I mean, there's nothing, and it's like, wait, it's like it's like, it's not, and it's like, even like look at like something like POW Passion, the Weiss, like the amount of money that we can make is so, it's like next to nothing. You know what I mean? It's like it, you know, it's like now we're finally able to not lose money because we have a Patreon, and we're but like again, and it goes back to all these like choices you have to make economically, where it's like, I know that I could probably get 2,000 people to pay $5,000 to pay $5 a month for a POW, right? So that means we're making 120,000, you know, yeah, probably, you know, if I get, all right, so yeah, you make about $120,000 a year, or maybe 140 on my math, like I'm like shaky headed, but anyways, a lot more money than we're making now. But like, in fact, like 10 times the amount of money that we're making now. But like, then that becomes the thing where it's like, okay, well, no one can read it then. then I've walled off my site, and I'm hoarding this information. I'm not allowing young writers to get their work exposed to people. And like, I mean, granted, I could pay them more if, we were making a lot of money. So, I mean, it is like, there's a trade-off, but that fucking sucks. Like, I can't, there's not advertisers that are gonna, like, there's not, unless you want to, like, basically lie. And that's like what has been the story of media. It's a bunch of like con men. I mean, Shane Smith's like a con man. Dave Portnoy's a con man. Those are the ones that succeed. I mean, the Aussie, is that what it's called? Aussie.
Yeah.
That's the perfect example. You're like, yeah, that's who makes money. It's like, even with theLAnd, I'm like, yeah, I know how to make, like, it's like, if I ever fail, maybe it's because of my own personal failings, but quite often I found in my failures in life, and I don't consider them failures, I consider them just like choices, it's because I didn't want to like be a con person. You know what I mean? I don't want to be a con man. Like, it's theLAnd. It's like, I see how to do it. Like, you can do it. It just requires it requires destroying everything that's good. You know what I mean? And it's like, and I'm trying not to be too cynical, but and I feel, to go back to what we're saying, that's my problem with film most of the time now. It's like, yeah, you get these people to slip through. It's always easy to point. You'll find 10 good movies, but like, it's not like the beauty to me of film was that like there was this breadth of things, not just like, okay, here's a bunch of Marvel movies and now we're gonna have Nomadland because we needed to win an award to prove that like it still exists.
Right.
I haven't seen it. I'm sure it's like very meaningful or whatever in its depiction of the working class Amazon people, but like it doesn't seem like a very I don't know, I just can't.
It's fine.
I can't motivate to watch that for 3 hours.
It's sad. Yeah, it's fine, but it's sad. I get that.
Yeah.
And to kind of emphasize on the point you made about like there not really being any comedies anymore. I think about that a lot. At least like at least on like the Hollywood scale. It's really sad to think about it because like you think back to like when Step Brothers came out. Like it felt like growing up because I'm about to turn 30. So like that was me like middle school, like high school era. Like there was just this like influx of like big budget comedies that like you just like
that was like the last run, I think.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you were saying that about the Apatow guy. Yeah, you just don't see that shit anymore. And like comedy kind of lives and dies on like streaming services and like like what is left of television at this point. And I think that's a big part of the reason why people gravitate toward stuff like that because like like it like unless you have the ability to go to like an independent art house theater, which not everybody does, or if you can like find the shit on like a streaming service somewhere, like you're probably not going to find like the funniest stuff you can look at type shit. Like and that's I think that's indicative to everything you're saying about how like just all these trade-offs of just like between like I don't know, like I think to myself like who's gonna be the next Starlito and what are they gonna look at that's gonna be their stepbrothers that inspires them to do that mixtape run, like that type of shit, like I can't think of what that next thing would be.
Probably was Mozzie.
Yeah, okay.
Mozzie's probably 32 or 33 now, so I mean there will always be that, but it's like, I mean, and I think like, but again, like, I was having this conversation like recently about like the middle class of rappers, you know what I mean? It's like it's just everything. It's the middle class of everything in American life, right? And that's what's been gutted. You see that in magazines, the New York Times is fine. Washington Post is fine. I mean, we'll see. I mean, like, I don't think people understand how long, I don't think people understand how precarious everything is. Like, it's like, even I'm from LA, right? And it's like, if Patrick Soon-Shiong, who's the owner of the LA Times, who's like one of the rich, I think he's the richest person in LA. If he decides tomorrow, I don't want to fucking deal with this shit, then LA's fucked. Like the whole West Coast is kind of fucked. Like, where are you gonna get news? I mean, there's a scene in Succession where it's like it's fitting, because like, like the Roy family, who are like basically a surrogate for the Murdoch family, right? He wants to like avoid like this hostile takeover, so that they want to like buy some, like, it's like a hybrid of like a better CNN and the New York Times, right? It's based on like kind of the Salzburger family and the Graham family of the Washington Post, and they're trying to buy it. And then Shiv, who's one of the characters in the show, is like, well, like, where am I getting my news from? Like, and she's like, I mean, like, and her fiance was like, oh, we have news, and she's like, yeah, but I'm not, yeah, but no. She's like, yeah, outside of like, the New York Times or the LA Times or wherever, the Washington Post, and she's like, and 40 angry young women on Twitter, like, there's not that much to like, and it's really precarious. I mean, it's like I think we saw that in every industry over the last few years. I mean, look at like journalism during the pandemic. I mean, like how many publications, like, I mean, are like a shell of themselves, like it like, I mean, like, I always go back to LA Weekly, but I got an email yesterday from somebody being like, and for those who don't know, I used to work for LA Weekly for about a decade, and I was a full-time, not a full-time, I was a weekly music columnist for about 6 years, and it got bought by a bunch of like right-wing Trump loving ghouls, and they gutted and fired basically everybody on the paper, and they're still going in like a shadow form. And it was like some like 10 best artists, and like you can pay LA Weekly to be in it, and like it says it's branded content, but it's like not really, you know what I mean? It's like, it's just, the whole thing is so fun, it's just like, that is what it, and like, I don't know, I think I think it's hard. I mean, I think there's also on the other side, I think there is maybe like, maybe it's too hard, but like, I feel like there is a certain ennui among younger millennials and or middle age, like, and Zoomers, like, oh, we can't do anything, we can't start things, we're gonna all be these independent, like wild gunman, influencer, journalist, whatever. And like, that's cool. Like, I'm not hating on it. Like, I mean, like, you can do good stuff. I mean, not like as an influencer per se, but like, I mean, I guess you can do good stuff as an influencer, but I'm gonna roll my eyes at it. But the point is, like, you kind of need to like band with people and like do things, and like it's really hard, and like, I don't know, but like, I don't even know if it's possible anymore, but I think the goal should be to kind of work together and build like new institutions. And to be honest with you, I have not seen that much, and that's maybe it's too hard, maybe the game, maybe the game is too rigged now. That's it's probably partially valid, but yeah, I just haven't seen it the same way that I hope to. Like where I like, again, to build the next whatever it is, and it just doesn't. Maybe just capital has just taken, it's just too, the buy-in is too high, like, but
yeah,
even it's like, I don't know, think of like cool indie labels. I haven't seen that many cool indie labels from this generation. I mean, some artists are doing cool stuff, but like, I don't know, what's the next like Sub Pop, what's the next Matador, what's the next Merge, what's the next, I mean, I don't know, whatever, I'm rambling.
Yeah. It's like, I really feel like it's just so I feel like everything is just really creator based now. I think like not even just for creators, but like, I feel like people are just more in the mood, like, especially considering how much capital has kind of like flattened everything. I feel like people are more attracted to people that they can like see and touch and relate to, and like that direct like farm to table type shit, like, and I think, and like, that's one thing I love about kind of like running through all of this right now, is just seeing so many like grassroots efforts like POW and POW Recordings, and just seeing so many artists take it upon themselves to like build something that they can kind of call their own. And like, I think that ethos, like, it's like, I don't think it's as prevalent as it should be, like, but there's at least like templates and like blueprints and people to look at and be like, oh, I want to be like that. It's just like on a much smaller scale. So it's like not as exposed, even if like every publication was like fucking like signal boosting it. It's, like, it's only going to go so far, but it's just like, I think that just kind of speaks to how, like, we, like, people always talk about the death of monoculture, right? And how like there's no like big like world binding events like outside of maybe like a Drake or a Kanye album, like, and I think like the stuff that goes on, like, you know better than anybody, like the stuff that goes on in the corners might not be as big and it might be in these niches, but like it's so potent. You know, like you look at something like Don't Come to LA, like the shit that y'all do.
Yeah.
Like, and just like stuff like that. And like seeing people like Greedo and seeing people like Draco and just all the like just seeing all this regional shit like you've been talking about, like it's potent, you know, like LA rap is potent, Detroit rap is potent, like Tennessee rap is potent, New York rap is potent, you know, like
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry.
No. I was just gonna say like that's just I think like I think that's where everything is, at least like to me, that's where the most interesting stuff is happening. And that's where like people are really starting to put their money behind that now. Like in a way where like you see like I was just thinking about this earlier today, like the fact that like we're at this point where the two most popular forms of listening to music are streaming and vinyl, which are like the two complete extremes, you know? Like it's like the most convenient form and then the most inconvenient form. Like there's no in between anymore. It's one or the other, and that's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, to me, that's like the only stuff that's ever been. I mean, I felt like there was a period, I guess, when I was growing up. I mean, like, and there have been periods where like the best rappers were the most popular rappers. But I don't know. I cannot say that anymore. Like that is not
Yeah.
like that shit is like. I mean, rap caviar shit is garbage. Like, and I'm not saying that like it's shit is awful. And it's like, ugh. Or like, I mean, there's some good stuff that like cuts through. You know what I mean? It's like, here's the thing. It's like I like Little Baby. Like he's cool. Like I thought his album last year was actually quite good, the deluxe version. But
Yeah, it's
like
good.
he's a perfect artist for the streaming era, right? Because he's like a third wave replica of Young Thug. And even for Young Thug to become the most popular version of Young Thug, he had to kind of like sand off the eccentricity and weirdness.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I mean, like, I'm not like, no shade on Young Thug. He's one of the greatest of all time. But it's just
Yeah,
like,
truly.
it just seems like in the last 5 years, like since like the peak of Thug and Future, the best shit hasn't been. I mean, regionally it is though, which is interesting, right? Where it's like in LA, like the most popular shit, is probably like it's all good. Like, you know what I mean? There's like Draco, Blue Bucks. I like Remble.
Yeah, Remble's fire. Shout out to Remble.
Those kids that are like popping, the Baby Stone Gorillas are dope. Like, all the Hoover, all that shit is good. And that like I feel like that on a regional level, but that again, that's so outside the system. And like, it's rap, it's just like everything, it got kind of like film unfortunately is one of those mediums I think where it's just the cost is so expensive. You know what I mean? It's so much money. You can't just go to a studio and just record. I mean, you can make a movie with an iPhone, but like, can you? I mean, you can, but like, it's I don't. I mean, TV is the same. It's like you can't make like really good, like, but I mean, you like cheap TV. You know what I mean? There's like no DIY TV.
Yeah, there's no public access anymore type shit. Yeah.
There is. I mean, I guess like it's array. I mean, you can put it on you. I mean, she obviously got Insecure off her own YouTube series, and that does
which is fire. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I respect anyone that does that stuff. I respect anyone that's doing it independently and like can like level up to the next level. But I do find in my limited dalliances with those industries, mostly with doc stuff, but even with scripted stuff, everything I want to do is always too fucking weird, or it's too esoteric, or it's like, and it's like not is the thing. Like also there's like a racial component that's involved and a class component that gets involved, or quite often, if it's a story about a black person, it has to be like the most famous black person, you know what I mean? Or it has to be, it's not working class black people. It's like a story of like, something closer to Insecure, where it's like more, typically of like middle to upper middle class kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
Story about like, I tried to do the Draco story 1,000 times, and like, I granted I could have done a 15-part podcast, but like, I don't know, to me, like that, to me, the podcast series is just like, I mean, I'll probably do one at some point in my life, but I just find like the 10-part podcast thing so uninspiring. Like I just don't, it just doesn't sound that appealing to me. Like it's just, I guess what I'm getting at is like the problem with everything now is like, it's like you have to have like an idea, then you have to have the story, then you have to do a podcast, and maybe you can do a documentary. And if all of them do well, then maybe you can get a TV show or a movie.
Right.
God, can't you fucking just say something is good and do the thing? But no, you can't, because everyone is fucking risk averse, because
Yeah,
everyone
everyone's scared.
numbers and no one has any fucking imagination left. And like part of that is our phones. You know, our phones are like slowly deadening our like will to live. You know, it's like mine too. Like, I mean, it's not like my brain is in such a robust state. You know, like looking at fucking Twitter and Instagram 75,000 times a day. It's like, yeah, like,
Right.
they do great things for your cognition, you know? But I don't know. I'm gonna delete it. I swear. Both.
Oh man. One of the one, what?
Not fully. I'll just, you know, for the day, so I can.
Right, you know, like,
Or two.
yeah, you know, we'll break free for a day or two. Everybody deserves that for at least a couple of days, you know.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. Like it. Like I don't know. Just like, but human beings and artists thrive well within limitations. You know, it like and like the in like it's like. So my friend ran into like Trey from Fish randomly, um, and I guess he told her like, um, there hasn't been a good band since the iPhone was invented. And like obviously I don't think he meant it totally literally, but like I don't know, like there's like I was listening, so like did you see the Stereo list of the best new artists yesterday?
I didn't read the list, but I saw that it went out. Yeah.
It was a cool list. I discovered a few good things. I mean, like I'm so deeply grateful that like Chris DeVille and Tom Bryhan put Fatboy Sharif and Gabe Nandas on it, which like I was believe so excited. And it was like I was listening to the bands, and it's like some of them were cool, some were bad, but like what the unifying characteristic, and this is not a knock, obviously, the writers. I think they're picking the best like of. I did find some really cool stuff, but most of it was recombined sounds, right? They're all like picking from this like postmodernist like hybrid gloop of things, whereas like it doesn't have like rap to me is still, whereas like rock used to kind of be like I don't know, maybe it's because rock is like, you know, artists are scared to kind of like a lot of white artists are scared to, you know, take from like hip hop or whatever. I mean, because usually, I mean, let's be honest, it usually ends terribly. But
Yeah.
but every now and then, like, or like someone like I think of the Talking Heads, right, as like the band that like did the most amazing stuff, right? They're taking from this like punk tradition, right? They're doing their own weird thing from it. Then they get into Fela, then they get into Found Sound and like In My Life in the Bush of Ghosts, and like all these cool things, and they make it into something new. And like I haven't really, I don't know, like I haven't heard anything that great. And obviously, I'm getting older, so like whatever. It's like, you know, partially my old ass brain, but like I just think like I hear it more in rap. You know what I mean? Like I hear it in rap still. I hear. Have you heard this kid Young Sloby?
One song, maybe.
Yeah, Alphonse is also a big fan of Young Sloby. I really like Young Sloby, and I'm about to be like that Paris Hilton meme where she's at the baseball game with the guy, and he's like whispering at her, and he's like,
Yeah.
actually, which is my life, sadly. But so like Draco kind of like transformed the West Coast, like the LA flow, right? Like a few years ago. Then that kid Briss picked it up in Sacramento, and then Briss started collaborating with the kids from Stockton a lot, you know, like EBK Young Jock. I think he might have done the song with Slow Beat, I'm not sure. Anyways, but so then like Stockton kind of picked up on this flow from Sacramento that came from LA. And now I think Young Slowby's doing something kind of interesting with it. But I don't really hear that with rock music the same way. Like in the way even where I heard it, it sounded, and again, like it is a factor of youth, but it felt like a lot of the bands in the 2000s were more interesting to me than the ones now. But you know, that could just be a function of age. But I don't know. I like to think that like when I hear something that I really like it kind of will transcend even my like, you know, senescent brain.
Right, and just like make you love things and laugh
Yeah.
at things and be sad about things that you didn't even think to do all that about. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I love like 18-year-old to 19-year-old rappers. You know what I mean? It's like I heard RX.
Yeah, man.
I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I haven't really heard, you know, it's like, okay, cool. You like post punk? Like, great. Sick.
Yeah, that's how I felt about Poppy when I first heard him too, and I was like,
Great.
I was like, this is wild. I love this, you know, like just really like.
Yeah. Rap is still the only thing probably in culture other than Succession. I mean, Larry David. I mean, that's the thing. Like Larry is still the best. I mean, like to me, like that. But again, like who's the next Larry David? I mean, like they don't. I mean, like even like a Seinfeld, like that show could never air. And like, I mean, think about it. Like Larry was like too fucking original for his own good. Like he was kicking around. He was almost 45 when Seinfeld first came on. You know,
Yeah.
and like he was like early 40s, like nobody knew who the fuck Larry David was. He couldn't last on SNL. You know what I mean? He was like too much of an outsider. And they don't really take chances on outsiders. Like, I mean, I don't know, like maybe I'm like sound like I'm whining or something. It's not what I'm trying to do. But like, I don't know, like like I could have had, you know, if people wanted to like, you just don't see it. No one hands you the keys anymore. Like, and like even like you even read this David Chase thing, right? Like it's like, I don't know, he was like in school or something and like a professor liked it. Next thing you know, he's writing on a TV show. Like that shit doesn't happen. Like what, your professor liked it and all of a sudden you like got a writing gig in a sitcom. Like now it's like you either have to go to Harvard or like have 100,000 followers on Twitter or like have some, you know what I mean? It's like it just doesn't, or like be like one of these like careerist, I'm a writer's assistant and like I was able to like, you know, your parents paid for you until you were 35 years old and then all of a sudden you kind of got a staffed on the show. So
Right.
it's just there I really think it has a lot to do with the just like the soullessness, the dead, like it's just a deadened society. And that it's not like people would point, see this is like the thing, right? People would be like they would negate that statement, but like, well, but the writers were saying this in the 50s, writers were saying this in the 60s, and you know what, they were probably right, but there was more then, you know what I mean? And it's like history doesn't I mean history, it's tricky, right? Like there can be sudden cataclysmic shifts that do change like a consciousness. I think more often than not there's a slow erosion. We just happen to be living at the end of a slow erosion. In 20 years it'll be way worse, and then people are going to look back and be like, oh well, like that was so cool because Succession was on the air. You know,
Right.
or whatever. Or like David Lynch got to make season 3 of The Return, or, you know, and
Yeah.
like Draco was like a best new music or what, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like whatever the fuck people will say.
Yeah,
And,
like Donald Glover, like Donald Glover did what he did with Atlanta, you know, like
yeah, but you know
yeah.
what? That was a fucking miracle and only happened because Donald Glover A was very fucking famous.
Yeah.
B, he was willing to fight Netflix or FX tooth and nail at every one of their terrible notes that I'm sure they had. I mean, like
Yeah.
if you're an FX executive listening, I love you. Give me a show. But like, but I mean, I know that like for a fact. Like I've talked to people close to it. They're like, no, we fought everything. Like, you know, and you,
Right.
by the way, you can only do that if you're really, really, really fucking famous, like Donald,
Right.
in multiple mediums, mind you. Like not just, he wasn't just a famous TV guy. He was a Billboard charting musician and a comedian. And but yeah, and like Atlanta, and like so, but I'll tell you this much. When I was trying to sell a show, nobody want about Draco or whatever, you know, when with Draco's participation, of course, and like I mean, there's the fucking best story in the world. I'll tell you two things. One, you say The Wire, people like that's like the third rail. If you mention The Wire, they're like, don't say The Wire, you know,
Yeah.
like because I mean, probably A for veiled racism that most of these white executives who are like holding up Black Lives Matter signs in their fucking windows don't quite understand the contradiction of the fact that they won't do you know what I mean? Like there's like, it's like this like neoliberal, like whatever, but they won't
Yeah.
show about something like Draco because they'll say something like, well, there's already Atlanta on the air. And you're like, no, rap isn't monolithic. Like,
Right.
in fact, there should be 20 fucking rap shows in the air because it's the most fucking relevant medium in the history of fucking America, like other than maybe jazz. But
Right.
rap is the number one. Rap has been the most popular medium now for 30 fucking years. Jazz had like maybe 20 years. Like the blues was always an outsider art form, other than like when like white people did their like kind of slick, boring versions of it. And like it's just fucking lame. Like, and it's like they'll, you know, why is, or you get Empire or something stupid like that, you know? It's
Right. Yeah. Something just like so like homogenized and
yeah,
just like,
yeah. So it's like, come on, and
you
like
know.
can't, and like a lot of it is classism again, like Donald Glover, you know, and this is I think actually I think Donald Glover deserves all the credit in the world for Atlanta because I think it is a really tremendous show, but he is able to kind of walk the line between those worlds really artfully. And you know, and he's depicting obviously poor and working class Atlanta culture, but also he knows what it's like to be in the rooms at, you know, the scene where they go into the streaming company at Apple, and you're
Yeah.
like, it's so good, or whatever it is, you know. But it really is just like they just don't want to like people, you know. It's like I don't know. Like, have you watched this new season of Curb?
No, I haven't actually. There's a lot that I haven't had the time to catch up on.
Yeah, well, it's good. As all Curb is, but they just like rip on like the Netflix. They have like a scene where like Larry's making a show at Netflix, and the room at Netflix is like, I don't know, it's just perfect. It's just like all these like, well-meaning, intelligent, nominally intelligent people that like are just trying to like, but like they just don't get it, and they probably never have. But like I forget who said it, but there was like, we were all like, someone always once said like about the movies, and this is so true. They were like, we're so much better off with like the old Jewish man like smoking a cigar, being like, I don't get it, but maybe it'll work, like this like asshole mogul from the, you know what I mean? Because they don't know what the fuck. They're just like, yeah, I don't know, it's good, just do it, rather than a bunch of CPAs. It's everything is run by fucking CPAs now. Disrespect CPAs. Some of my best family members are CPAs. My dad is a CPA. But I want my dad fucking telling me what's good. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, come on, like, give me a fucking break. This shit is stupid.
Real quick before we move on, like you saying all of that just made me think about I was watching the Netflix series the movies that made us, because they just put out they did a whole bunch of Halloween episodes. They did one on Halloween, one on Friday the 13th, and one on Nightmare on Elm Street. And like just hearing the story of how New Line Cinema came together, and how the guy who was running it at the time, like he bet the entire farm of the company on A Nightmare on Elm Street. Like if that like for anybody listening, if that movie didn't do well, New Line Cinema would have died before 1990. Like it would have been gone. So nobody's doing that anymore. Nobody's making those like the amount of like the part that was craziest to me was when like some of the crew were talking about how I forget the woman's name, but I think she was like one of like the higher ups on the set, and she had to go around to all the crew and be like, hey, like we're like, in order for us to be able to do this movie, we're not going to be able to pay you for a week. Like she had to go tell them, and like she was like pregnant at the time, and she had to like go tell everybody like individually, like, we can't pay you this week. Can you still do this for us, please? I promise there's money coming. We just don't have it, type shit, like. And this is
about risks. That's it.
Right. Yeah.
Anything good will like not make sense to people. Like it just won't. Like, and I'm not saying that I'm such a visionary where there's been plenty of things where I like, again, David Lynch is a perfect example. Like I didn't get that the first time I fucking saw that. Draco, the first time I heard it, I was like, yeah, this is cool. I don't love this. You know what I mean? And it's like, it really like, but like, it's like same with Thug I liked pretty immediately, but even Thug was fucking weird. But it's, the thing is, Little Baby will have 12 times the success Thug has had. I mean, maybe not 12 times, but like he's probably a popular streaming artist than Thug, because Little Baby is the more sanitized version of Thug, even though like I'm talking about artistically. Personal life, I have no idea. Baby, I think is, from all accounts, is very much a real one. And I like Baby, but my point remains, it's like, you can't, like the safe shit is boring. Like no one like there's no point, but like it'll, it's like, I mean, even though I didn't watch Squid Game, but like, I don't know, you're like, that seems like a decent like risk, like evidence of risks working.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like, I don't know, like it just is one of those things where it's like people don't trust themselves, and maybe like we are a culture that lacks imagination. So maybe we do have to import the cool shit from South Korea. I mean, probably.
I mean, most of the time we do, like look at something like
Departed, great film.
Like, and oh man, there was something else that like just got oh man, not Akira. That's not happening anymore. I'm so happy. But there's something else that I was like watching that's like it's not Korean or Japanese or Asian at all, but the show Ghosts on BBC. Uh-huh. It's this really, really great show about this couple who like inherit this mansion, and like a whole bunch of ghosts of people who died in the mansion across time, like live in there. And the woman gets bumped on the head and she can see and talk to all the ghosts, but her partner can't. And like they did like 3 seasons of it on the BBC. It's really, really funny. It's like, it's 3 seasons, like 6 episodes each, half hour. You can blow through it in like 3 days. And they made an American remake of it. And I'm like, yo, why? Like it like I like it's a fairly British show, but like not in a but it's not like impenetrable, and it's really, really funny and like sweet and charming. And it's like like why do the American remake when the show is already on? It's like when Netflix snatches up the live action adaptation of the anime that's already going through its like fourth or fifth or sixth arc. Like, why do that to people? Like,
well, I mean, that's what it is, though. It's like it's all this like bloodlust for IP, and like it's just so stupid. It's just like it's so beyond, and it's what it is. It's like I never understood this, and I suppose it's a position of privilege on my part, and I will readily acknowledge it. But I also think no matter what kind of situation I grew up in, I'd always been a motherfucker ready to lose my job. Like I just, you know what I mean? And I think it's like if you want to be good at what you do, you have to be ready to lose your job at any time, no matter what. Like, and that doesn't mean be an asshole. That doesn't mean to be disrespectful. It just means stand up for what you fucking believe in.
Just have convictions. Yeah.
But if you're wrong, you're wrong. Like, I don't know. Like, I can be a stubborn. I mean, anyone who's probably worked with me could be like, oh, he's so like, like he's stubborn. He thinks he's right all the. I mean, I'd like to think that like I always listen. I don't always agree. I always like to think that I listen. Maybe I'm sure a bunch of people would contradict that, but but I don't know. Like, I know what I like. You know what? Like, I am going to fucking go down with the ship. You know what I mean? Like, I will. Like, and like people need to be willing to fucking go down with the ship, and no one does because everyone like it's a real like lifeboat society where everyone's just like plotting their next gig, and you see it in politics. Like, I mean, it's like the thing. It's like you see in politics. It's like, dude, like how good can that job be? Like, I get it. Like, you're like maybe you have power and you have clout, but like. You know what would give you actually like more respect from people? Like if you stood up for yourself, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like people would actually fuck with you. Like, and it's like, but it's like everyone, I mean, that's the thing in American culture though, is like we always want more. Where it's never enough to be the thing. It's always like what's next. I don't know.
Yeah.
Next might not be in the same flight pattern. You know what I mean? It might be like completely off, it doesn't like, I don't know, like it's like even this book, right? Like I don't know. Like, I know that the book I should have probably written first was like a rap book. I didn't want to write a rap book first. It's like the next book I wrote, I publish very well might be a children's novel, like,
right.
50-page children's book. Like, I mean, a novel, air quote, but like, you know what I mean? It's like weird, but like, I don't know. Artists are supposed to be fucking weird. They're supposed to be, like eccentric and like, and I'm not saying like calculatingly eccentric. I'm like to me, like the interesting people in the world don't make like sense necessarily. It's like that's why I think Thug is really interesting. Future is fucking interesting. I mean, who knows? Like, imagine what the fuck goes on in Future's brain. Like, he's fucking crazy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, not all good for sure, but like, I mean, and that's the thing. It's like I'm more willing to like kind of It is one thing I don't necessarily like about our society, and it's like I think that like too much of it is dictated by like I don't know, like like we don't. People are like, I don't know, like all art. I don't want to go in like the dumb trope of like all artists are fucked up, but like a lot of artists are fucked up. So I try to have more empathy. Sometimes probably too much empathy. You ever like hear when Erykah Badu speaks, like about she'll say stuff and you're like, dude, Erykah Badu, like don't defend that thing, and you're like, don't, it's not right. But like, I can understand where she's coming from because it's such a place of tremendous empathy for like outsiders and weirdos and like eccentrics. And, like,
to a fault type shit.
Yeah. And like I get like you can't necessarily say that you don't want to be like that. There need to be consequences for people's actions, obviously. And like I'm not saying like people should be like wild and out of pocket at all times, but I'm just saying that like our culture is like I don't fuck with. I mean, like I have some careerist sides to me, I'm sure, you know what I mean, but like I just don't get the whole like we're just like a culture of like careerists, and like, well, now we're kind of a culture of no one wants a career, which I respect more, but we all have to live. That's like why I'm like, people are quitting other jobs. I'm like, yeah, obviously, like what, like how much makes sense,
right? We're just like consistently shuffling the board,
and
that's like the blessing and the curse of working in this industry.
I don't disrespect anyone who, mind you, I don't disrespect anyone that like wants I take my work very seriously, as anyone could know, probably way too seriously. I try not to take myself seriously. I probably do, unfortunately, but I try not to. but I take my work like deathly seriously as many people would say to my detriment. But and it's like I think like it's important to, I just think like I guess my point about the whole careerism thing is like you can't let your career get in the way of your integrity. You can't let your and like again, like everyone is flawed, like no one is gonna be perfect. Like everyone, you can always pick a hole. And I'm sure people can pick a hole in me. I mean, I've done articles where I'm like, yeah, all right, I wrote for that publication or I did this. You know what I mean? Like I do my best. I mean, everyone's got to live. So you have to like again, like I think the thing that's really missing from all this is like feel like we either practice like too much empathy or too little. It's like there's very little like of like that's a reasonable amount of empathy, but that's just America because America doesn't do moderation well.
Right. No. Yeah. America's always been about excess, bro. Like from the jump, it was founded on excess.
Yeah.
But
dump some tea into Harbor.
Like, but that's a whole other conversation. Like,
get us on a whole other path.
Son, I'm like I'm loving this so far. Like we're already like about maybe like an hour and change in. Yeah. Like I've only asked 2 questions, and those are the best kinds of interviews anyway. But I wanna
way too much. So,
Nah, man, you're in good company. I talk too much too. It's honestly refreshing to hear somebody talk more than me. But I do want to before we move on to stuff about you, like and like your work more specifically, like we were talking about movies many moons ago, and I wanted to know like like as you kind of grow up and like you said you had this basis in like comedy and you really kind of gravitated toward that stuff. As you got a little older, like when did you was there ever like when was the first did you ever have that moment where you stopped looking at movies as more than just entertainment and something that you like? It doesn't even have to be in like an artful sense, but like when did you first like connect to movies and like
on an emotional level?
Yeah, like
Field of Dreams. I must have been like 7 or 8 years old, and like still like probably the only movie that like I mean I haven't seen it probably in like 15 to 20 years, but like for a long time that was like definitely the only like I don't cry at movies. I'm not like a much of a crier, not like in a weird way, but like I pick my battles with a weep.
I feel you.
A breakup and a death are generally my thing. I don't cry. People have been like, well, you don't cry of joy. I'm like, I've never been so happy that I've cried. Maybe that's because I'm like Jewish and I don't think I get that happy. But I mean, like I get pleased, but I've never cried at joy.
Please.
I don't cry at the movies. I've never really cried on a TV show. But I mean, maybe a little more when I was younger. But Field of Dreams for me, that to me was like the first movie that I remember being like, and because I guess it hit all the things that I loved at the time, which were like history, baseball, it had its own mythology, just like the story of like Moonlight Graham, I guess really affected me. He like makes the major leagues and he's just like, it's like, I don't think he get an at bat, right? He was like a pinch runner or something. And like, the old doctor like dying and going to the Burt Lancaster dying and going to the cornfield and like, like just I Kevin, like I loved the Black Sox scandal. I thought that was so cool. Like I like these baseball players betting and like, did you ever see Field of Dreams?
Yeah. I've seen Field of Dreams.
Yeah, that's like 8 Men. I loved 8 Men Out, the movie when I was a kid. I like was fascinated by the Black Sox scandal, and like I loved like and I just remember like I just the end when he like plays catch with like his ghost dad. Like I was just like, oh, that's so beautiful. Like what I mean? It's just like, and it's like I guess I connected to having even then like I guess I connected to kind of just the difficulties of connection with I think men like and their boys and their fathers. I think it's probably gotten better, but like connect even like to this day. Like I mean, my dad. I mean, God knows I don't want to talk about politics. I mean, really, like baseball is probably the only thing that like we can kind of like really talk about. Still like I mean, we don't really talk about not much, but baseball was always the thing. And I loved baseball when I was a kid. Like I wanted to be a professional baseball player. Like I played in college and I thought I was like, thought maybe, but clearly not. But yeah, that to me was the one. And like at the end of the movie, I would when he played catch, I would just like, and to me, that was just, I thought it was really beautiful. Like, it's just like this, like all this I just love I like magic, I guess, like, you know, not in a kind of like, I mean, I guess in a way that was like maybe a form of magical realism, Field of Dreams, you know, because it's like a realistic thing, and then all of a sudden there's like ghosts in a cornfield like playing baseball,
Right.
and some Gabriel Garcia Marquez for the Heartland. But I don't know, I've never been to Iowa. I don't like, not, you know, it just, but it really sort of chord with me, and I think that was the first movie I ever really it's the first movie I ever really remember like being deeply emotionally affected to. And I was super young, like I was like 7 or 8. Um, I still remember like the theater, you know, it's like one of those things where it's like I remember the theater and the popcorn and like, you know, the Beverly Center in West LA, like just kind of like this like classic 80s neon mall, you know, with like the icy igloo thing. And yeah, so I mean, I think
Right. Yeah. That's
so.
a moment.
Yeah.
That's a moment. Wow. So like, Field of Dreams is I don't even know what else to say about Field of Dreams. I feel like you kind of just covered it right there. But like that's definitely like one of those that like between like that and a movie like Angels in the Outfield, I feel like those two things. Like I feel like Angels in the Outfield is kind of like it's kind of like the more magical and less realist version of Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
Like
I loved all those movies. I loved Rookie of the Year, Little Big League. I mean, The Sandlot, obviously. I mean, that was like a good time. You know, it was like for kids' movies. Now it's like, I don't know, like it doesn't. I don't have any kids. But, you know, so I can't really assess children's movies now. But you know, it just seemed like they were making kind of these kind of heartwarming family. Now, I don't think they make baseball movies for kids. I don't think they. I mean, I guess there weren't that many basketball movies for kids ever. But I mean, that's always been. I mean, White Man Can't Jump. I remember watching that as a kid and be like,
yeah.
this is the best shit ever. You know, I love that.
we had like Mike. So I think that's
Like,
one of the only ones I can think of right now. There's more, but that's the one that always
yeah,
comes to mind.
White Man Can't Jump. Not a kids movie, but maybe a kids movie.
Hey, it's for the kids, like it's not a kids movie, but it's for
How
the
much for the
kids.
children?
But yeah, in like the Wu-Tang sense. Yeah. So like speaking of that, like when did like you have this moment with Field of Dreams, like when did you first fall in love with music, and like when did that really become a thing that you were like emotionally connected to?
When I became I mean, I remember like hearing music in the background. I remember like having like cassette tapes of like MC Hammer and like Ice Ice Baby when I was like a kid. I think the first thing I ever really like loved that was like my own was probably like The Chronic when I was like 10 or something.
Yeah.
And like and then but like where I really like connected like I mean like because like The Chronic, you're like, this is the best thing ever, but like I wasn't like, damn, I'm really feeling the emotional resonance of this. I mean I mean, you know, actually probably like where I deeply was like, because it's about the same time, was probably like Nirvana, you know? Like I would probably say Nirvana because I was never like much of a rock guy. Like there were only a handful of rock groups that I really like. I liked like the grunge. You know, grunge was like out at the same time as like the first gangster rap or that era of gangster rap, I should say. And so you know, I was into like Pearl Jam and I was into like Nirvana and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains. Kind of didn't go that much deeper than that. You know, there were like kind of random one-offs I liked, you know, for certain bands. And I loved the Doors and I loved like Hendrix and the Beatles and stuff. But that, to
Right.
me, it was like Nirvana was like, I think it was probably like for me, like I mean, I loved Nevermind. You know, I probably heard it like a year or two after it came out. In Utero, though, I remember getting on cassette tape. I remember being like really young and being like, I need to get In Utero. Um, and I like wore that out. I mean, probably though the real one that like really hit the hardest was the Unplugged. That was always my favorite of Nirvana Unplugged. And because like, I think it came out after he died or right around the time he died. Like it was,
Right.
you know, and that was like really raw. I mean, that's like I discovered like a lot of. I mean, Lead Belly is covering Lead Belly. It's first time I ever. Man Who Sold the World. It's probably the first time I ever heard David Bowie. I didn't even, you know, I didn't know it at the time. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think Kurt Cobain. I mean, I think there's a reason why he like, you know, a lot of rappers relate to him because there's like so much angst in his music and like it's like a spirit of rebellion. I think I connected that with like how I loved rap. I loved rap, spirit of rebellion. You know, it just, I don't know. I always kind of, and you know, I thought like I liked Kurt Cobain's lyrics a lot. I thought they were like really imaginative. You know, it's just like all those like, you know, Penny Royalty, you know, Francis Farmer will have a revenge on Seattle. these like weird titles, you know, like Polly want a cracker, like just like weird, you know what I mean? It was so strange, and like it was like so above my ability to understand it, I think, at the time. Like, you know, he really was like a really like, you know, it was almost like a form of symbolist poetry. And you know, this is about the time where I like got really into like the Basketball Diaries by Jim Carroll was probably like, I mean, I remember watching that movie when I was like I think in 8th grade. That was like a big deal for me because I had like discovered that book that year, and I must have read the Basketball Diaries. Like that to me was like the first book of like my adulthood, even though it was like 13. I guess I'd just been bar mitzvahed probably, so I was technically an adult in some capacity, not really.
Right.
But I loved the Basketball Diaries because like it was you know, I was related to athletes who were kind of like weird, you know, like so he was like this great all world athlete, like playing basketball with like Kareem, but when he was Kareem was Lou Alcindor in New York in like the 60s, but also like a heroin junkie and like just getting into crazy shit and like meeting all these girls. And I thought that was so cool. And the movie came out when I was in the 8th grade, which wasn't very good. Have you ever seen the Basketball Diaries movie?
I have, yeah. It's just okay.
It's just okay. That's like something actually like I would kill to like make that like a series, like a series of like the Basketball Diaries, but of like New York in the 60s and like based on Jim Carroll's life. Like that would be like everything for me.
Wow.
But just like set like 63 to 67 in New York City, it'd be amazing. You know, this like basketball star doing heroin. I mean, that's what it would be. It'd be a really good like 30 episode show. But I remember, yeah, I remember they used to have a Virgin Megastore, and I think the Sunset Lemley might still be there, on Sunset Boulevard in West Hollywood, and I got to meet Jim Carroll, and he like autographed a Basketball Diaries poster for me, and I had it up in my room. God knows whatever fucking happened. I mean, it was so ragged by the time, but yeah, that was super cool to me. It was like kind of like a washed. I mean, he's probably was only in his 40s at the time, which is insane. But like he looked like 150 years old. Like I mean, heroin did not do wonders for his skin. And
Right.
yeah, that movie was not very good. It was like Marky Mark is like 5'5" playing like a rugged power forward, and you're like, I don't know about this one, guys, you know. But yeah, so it's a long
Yeah.
answer.
No, no, I get it. It's all good, and I'm happy you went to the Basketball Diaries because I actually wanted to ask about like, you know, like as you're growing up and you're kind of like having these experiences and taking in all this stuff, like all this different type of media, but like of course like music and film in particular. Like was there ever a moment when you were younger where you first like directly connected rap and film together as like or like not even rap and film specifically, but like just music and film in general as two things that are in conversation with each other?
Yeah, I mean, it would. I mean, it has to be like those, like the classic hood movies of the '90s for sure, like Boys in the Hood. That was
Right.
another movie that like I remember like made me cry. Like you know when like Ricky gets shot, and I was like, oh, not Ricky. Menace to
Yeah.
Society. I mean, for sure, like that was like a classic soundtrack. And like I remember that when that movie came out, I don't think I saw it in theaters. I think I saw it like on VHS or something. But that was like a huge deal. I mean, I remember like when Dead Presidents came out, like that soundtrack, like we used to bump that in high school constantly.
That's
Uh,
classic.
yeah, I mean, like I used to buy a lot of the hip hop soundtracks. So I mean, like High School High was not a good movie, but like an amazing soundtrack. I mean, Sunset Park, Above the Rim for sure. You know, that was like a classic soundtrack of the era. Yeah, probably through hip hop soundtracks. Like I definitely like New Jersey Drive. I mean, there were a lot of but yeah, those were the one. Like I'm trying to think of like the best combination of. I mean, like obviously Belly was a little bit later, but like and not as great of a movie, but like obviously really stylized and cool. Uh,
Yeah.
like really well made, but like not a good movie. But yeah, I mean those were the ones. I'm trying to think of like. I mean, and I would also say, well, I guess you said hip hop, but probably Pulp Fiction too. You know, when like that
Yeah.
was such. I mean, there's no hip hop in that, but I remember when that came out, like I definitely had that soundtrack on CD, and that was one of the first times I ever was like so cognizant of how music and film could like work in tandem, right? Because it's like you know where like Urge Overkill, like who cares about like Urge Overkill, like doing like a Girl You'll Be a Woman Soon cover, like what, like you know what I mean? Or like Dick Dale, like when he's shooting up heroin, John Travolta's shooting up heroin, or like you know, or it's like even it was a teenage wedding and the old folks wish them well where they're doing that dance. You're like, these are songs I never would have listened to on my own, but all of a sudden they became like kind of these like cherished anthems to me just because of this movie that I really loved. So
Right.
yeah, definitely there.
Yeah, just like those isolated moments. Like like I can't think of any specific examples right now, but like I can like there's plenty of songs that I either didn't know or like really just came to appreciate because of a specific moment in a movie, you know, like those were two like really sacred things to me growing up. So like I get it, you know, like especially for somebody, you know, like one of the things I love about Tarantino, like there's things I love and things I hate about Tarantino, but one of the things I love is that he's really good at picking good musical moments, and like he's just so good at that. I don't know how he does it, but he's got a good ear for that shit.
There's Paul Thomas Anderson. I mean, like most of the really great. I mean, Wes Anderson has really unbelievable music cues too. I mean, like
Yeah.
those. I mean, like those guys, like to their credit, like really, you know, like I'm trying to think who's like the modern equivalent of like. I mean, Moonlight when they did the classic Man Chopped and Screwed, that was a pretty unbelievable music. That
That
was.
was beautiful, bro.
I mean, there are still some great moments, but not like I'm trying to think of like movies in the last few years I've seen where like the music cues were that good, like where I'm like, oh, I mean, yeah, nah, I can't really think of ones to. I mean, yeah, like Inherent Vice, I thought was really cool, but that was like also 5 or 6 years ago now. So
Yeah, I gotta rewatch it because I saw it. I was really excited about it, and I fell asleep about a quarter of the way through and woke up like 45 minutes
yeah,
later.
it's
And but yeah, but like it's weird because like I fell asleep and then I woke up, but I felt like it made as much sense at that point as it would have if I stayed asleep or if I stayed awake. Like it made no difference. But you know,
it's the only movie that I would say you have to read the book probably once, maybe twice, see the movie once, maybe twice, and it's like actually worth it. Like where I'm
right?
like one of those things where I'm like, oh, like I'm about to reread the book now, probably for like the fifth time, or the fourth or the fifth time, and it's like I've probably seen the movie like 4 or 5 times. It's just like I love it. It's one of my favorite movies ever.
Yeah, I'm a really big PTA guy, and I'd like and like I've been meaning to rewatch Inherent Vice, and I just haven't. But I'm gonna do that one day because I liked what I saw. But like,
Yeah, it's amazing. You got to read the book though. Read the book is
no,
really great.
I had the book in my bookcase. Like I'm looking at it right now. I just gotta like do it. You know,
Yeah,
got a whole list of shit.
yeah.
Um, so okay, so we made it through all of that, and I want to talk to you about writing because like your writing style is really like extremely detail oriented, and just like the things that you manage to put in your pieces are like really astounding to me because like you write about locations like you've lived in them your whole life. Like I read like your Pitchfork review on the Chance album and you're on Acid Rap, and you're just like name dropping these like little like random areas and just like little things that you would think that only somebody who like grew up in Chicago would know. And like even like your review of Illmatic, like I'm just like it's like you've lived everywhere, bro. Like I don't understand how you do what you do. Like it's I'm just like really curious about like your like observational process like while you write. Like do you like I know you travel a lot.
Yeah.
So like when you're about to write something and you're like really like are you constantly like recording and like writing things while you're walking around, or is it just like all like recall like
Yeah, it just depends on the story. I mean, like if ideally, like yeah, like I mean, all like there was a part of my career for sure where, especially when I'd review albums, I would like walk around, listen to them, take notes, and like. But I don't know. Like usually, it's like I kind of like to leave like improvise. I kind of like to like leave room for like improvisation. Like I don't really write draft. I usually write one draft. I don't do like multiple. I mean, which is like why my editors fucking hate me. When I'm done with my one draft, I'm like, no, I'm done with it. Like I know what and that's not always true. Sometimes like a really good editor will be like, you didn't put this in, you didn't put this in. This should be here. Like those are the best. I mean, I love that. But I mean, yeah, like, and in terms of like, it depends. Like when I'm reporting a story, like say when I'm in Baton Rouge or something,
right?
um, like for sure, I'm always taking notes. I'm always taking photos. I'm taking video. Um, like just trying to. I mean, that's been like a benefit of the iPhone for sure. One of the, I really, but yeah, I'm always kind of taking notes. I try to. I don't. I try to like. I wish I did more, honestly. Like I wish I kept like more faithful notes of my day-to-day life. It's like probably one of the things I regret the most. But I mean, I don't know. Like I do an insane amount of research too. Like I
I
think,
could tell, bro.
yeah, I do an insane amount of research. I really like to. I think like so much of good writing is in specifics. And I really want to make sure, and like I'm sure I've got it wrong. Sometimes like, there's only so many things you can be an insider about. And like
Right.
sometimes you're an outsider trying to be an insider and you botch it. I'm sure people could say that about some things I've written, but I try to listen. Like when I'm reporting, especially, I try to listen. That's the one thing. I always try to over report if I can. Sometimes you can over report and drive yourself insane. But like for instance, like there's a review. Um, I was supposed to write. It's a very infamous. I'm sure Jeremy Larson's listening to this. Is gonna be like, oh, you mentioned that, but I totally fucked up. Like, and it was my bad. Like a lot. My cat had died, and we were putting out the first issue of theLAnd, and I never wrote a Doggy Style Sunday review, which I promised, and I feel bad about. I'm sorry, Jeremy. Wonderful person, wonderful editor, and
Shout out to Jeremy.
very funny, and an excellent writer. And but yeah, but the point, like, okay, the reason why I didn't write it beyond like the actual life shit, that just like I was just not in a good, and then I went to write a children's book, whatever. But I had like a 75 page, like it was a Doggy Style Sunday review, and I think I had like a 75-page document mostly about Snoop Dogg's murder trial. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like I don't know what the fuck I would have used, but like I was so deep in the research thing. Oh, I should still write it. I told Jeremy I would. I still would like to at some point in my life, but um, when we're all dead and Pitchfork is owned by Anna Wintour's granddaughter. But it like, yeah, I don't know. It just like it. You got to go. I always try to like. I always think so much of like good writing is about like having a narrative. You have to find the narrative, and you have to really just like what's a step beyond, what's below the surface, what isn't necessarily like obvious on an initial listening or initial observation with your eyes, but what is kind of bubbling beneath. And I try to do that as much as I can. I mean, it's and sometimes like you just kind of have to like, I mean, just use your imagination on some level, like to be like, okay, like take a little creative license. I mean, not like obviously, I mean, you obviously want it to be 100% accurate, but there's, I think sometimes you kind of have to like dramatize things, make them, you have to build tension into things. And sometimes, and that sometimes requires details, right? Because like whether it's a film or like whether it's a book or whether it's a TV show, like the attention to detail is like the little things, it's like, I mean, I like the movie. I didn't like love it, but I just think about like Lady Bird. I just popped it in my brain where it's like it's like Timothy Chalamet's character has like the Cannibal Ox poster, and you're like, that's such a funny attention to detail. You're like,
Right.
I don't think it's possible. I don't think he would have, but it's just like things like that where it's like I don't know. You always want that like cannibal. You know what I mean? You always want that like little weird detail where you're like, oh, because sometimes it's like that little weird detail like locks it in your brain, right? Because brains are strange. Like I don't know, like I don't know what the thing is that I always try to think of like when I look at what I'm writing, does this click in my brain? Do I see it? What is the detail I'm missing that like will make it click? Because it's not always like 500 words about a person's appearance. Sometimes it's like one thing about their personality or like their shape of their eyes. I don't know, where it's just like you get the mental image. And I'm always trying to kind of get that in my own head so I can hopefully, and sometimes you just fail, but just do your best.
Hey man, like like it's just like your writing is so visceral in that way, like regardless of whether it's like whether it's a review or an interview or reporting, like you take people there in like a way that I can't think of very many of the people who do it the way you do. Like like most recent example I could think of is your Freddie Gibbs piece you wrote for The Ringer, like just like shadowing him and like really like obviously like you weren't there when he was fucking like moving white in his sneakers and shit, but like I
Totally.
felt it, like like I felt the shoes he was wearing, I felt the fucking concrete, like
And sometimes you have to ask like one more question. You know what I mean? Where it's like,
right.
what were you wearing? Like, what do you remember? Like, what was that? Like what do you remember about that day? And then you have to like, keep on going in and asking more questions until, and then you don't, you might not just like do it as an answer. It just might be like, you're describing it yourself as though you were there, but you got all this information from them. so you were there in a sense. I mean, you weren't physically there, but like you got what was needed. And of course, you know,
Right.
mercy of someone else's recollection, but I mean, memory is always faulty no matter who's remembering it.
Yeah. I just, like I just think that that's one of the things, like outside of the fact that you just like have such a understanding of whatever it is you're writing about, you just bring a lot of knowledge to it. Like there's just those personal touches, like that's the type of stuff that really helps people like connect to a piece and like really get, like that's what a good interview should do. Like that's what like a good piece in general, like what like it should there should be something that's pulling you into it, like not just like I'm here, read it if you want. Like, nah, like let me show you type shit.
I
Like,
try not to like, like I went to like 3 nights of the Grateful Dead, and it was like, I don't know, like on the real, like I only went because like I only was writing about it because I wanted 3 nights of really good tickets. Like, you know what I mean? But it
I
was
mean, hey,
like I don't want to write about the Grateful Dead again. Like, especially like I got other shit, like, but I was like, I'll take, you know what I mean? Fine, I'll write about it. But it was like one of those things where it's like, okay, now this is a challenge. You've already written too many words about them before. I'd already written one insanely long piece about them. And I profiled Bob Weir once, and I wrote a review a few years ago of one of the Dead Company shows. But it's like, how can you kind of write something that has meaning, even though you're kind of like, you know what I mean? It's like, how can you bring something more out of yourself rather than just mailing it in? You know what I mean? Because it's like, I don't want to like, I mean, obviously it's not the greatest piece I've ever written, but it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't want my name on something that I can't stand behind. And I think that's like a lot of people, will do pieces for a check. I mean, like for a check, and like I try not to really, like, as much as I can. Like, of course, you know, sometimes you need the sometimes like someone wants to pay you like a couple $1,000s or something to profile some fucking terrible artist for a magazine, or you know what I mean, some corporate thing. It's like, I mean, I've written about Big Sean like 3 or 4 times. I mean, God knows, hopefully no one's read it. Very nice guy, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't writing about Big Sean because I liked his music. I was doing because in the words of Makami, I wanted the bag, you dumbass.
yeah.
But it was just like whatever. Like, it's like you still try to like make it as good as you can, no matter what you're doing. I mean, and because you really only are as good as your last piece, and I try to keep that to heart, because it's like, you can always, I always like, I don't want to fall off, like why do, like, I always think about like, you mentioned Gibbs, like, I mean, that's something, obviously Gibbs, like Gibbs is like a real, like, I fuck with Gibbs heavy. And that's one of, I mean, like, as I've known him for a long time, but like that's one of those things that like why I fuck with him so heavy is because you go through Freddie's catalog, there's nothing that's halfway. Freddie has no bad verses. Freddie has some verses that are great, some verses are just fine, but he has no bad ones. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, he has no, because Freddie never, he's no bad albums. He never mailed it in. He never just like did some whack shit for money. I mean, like, really, I mean, like I said, like, I'm sure there's some European shit, I mean, I'm sure there's like a couple
Right.
euros
Right.
that paid Freddie 10 grand for a verse, and like they probably are out there somewhere. But but like at the same time, like, I just don't want to, like, I think it's really important to kind of like try to, I don't know, I guess I'm kind of old fashioned in a lot of ways, like I really like, I think like that's kind of one of like my sadness about our society is like, there were a lot of bad things about like the past. I don't think it's that even, I don't even think they're worth talking about because they're pretty fucking obvious, you know. But there were like some good things about the past too, and like in all, you know what I mean, all of humanity. And I think like in our rush to be like, we just like cast aside everything. That's a very American thing. We are not a culture that like believes in tradition very well. I think that's partially one of the reasons why hip hop is so great. Cause like, you know what I mean? It's like it's cool now that like we have like a guy like a Makami, or like a Fatboy Sharif, who really are about the tradition. I love that. I also love the fact that there are guys like RX Nephew, where I'm like, yeah, like, I don't know, like, this kind of reminds me of Razkaz as the nature of the threat. And he's like, Raz, what? Threat who? you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's good. Like, I want both, and I think like that is something that I guess like I guess in some way I kind of, I think there's artists that are like radically like disconnected from any tradition whatsoever.
Right.
There's artists that are like very much a part of like a tradition and are trying to bring something new. And like, you know, I think Kendrick does that really well, you know, to his credit. I think he's like a really great artist. And then sometimes you can be like J. Cole and you're like, just, you're way too steeped in tradition. You know what I mean? Like you haven't killed your idols. You have to kill your idols to some respect. You know, you can't just be an imitation of them.
Right.
And unfortunately is now most of culture, because it's like, you know, imitation pays well, because it's like you take the real originator. It's like we're saying about Little Baby earlier. You take the true originator, who's like, I mean, I don't know, you could probably say it was Wayne ultimately, if you really, you know, that style kind of comes from Wayne.
Yeah,
And then Thug
definitely.
added something really crazy to it. And then Little Baby kind of made it like more, and Gunna, and you know, and Sababy, and you know, Sababy's cool. I like Sababy, but
I
like, I
love
mean,
the baby. Yeah.
I like all of them too. Gunna has some cool shit too. Like, I'm not like, not even hating on any of them, but it's just like it. You're always going to be like, you know, Blockhead tweeted something about this once, and it was like I think Blockhead's like a really great producer, like, you know, the Aesop Rock producer, and you know,
Yeah, of
obviously
course.
own stuff with Ninja Tune. Yeah, of course. I think he's great, but like, Pretty Lights took his style and ran with it and was playing like Red Rocks, you know, at, you know, huge stadiums and our theaters. And Blockhead, you know, he's got a good career, but he's not playing like 20,000 room capacity, and that's always kind of how it works. You know, you see it with like, you know, the generation that like kind of steals it. So I don't know. I think it's important to kind of I don't know. I guess keep all these ideas in your head at the same time. You know, when and then once you start to actually create something, forget them all. You know, just
Right.
them, just like, I'm so focused on this, I'm not thinking about anything else.
Yeah, and then just pave over it and just recreate it all over again, you know?
It's like my Twitter 75 times, and I'm like, stop this. Do this.
Oh my god. There's a couple pieces of yours that I want to touch on really fast because like I really feel like they get to that essence that I love so much. The first one is the piece on Matt Villainy, Searching for Tomorrow, that you wrote for Pitchfork, which
Yeah.
is just like this really in-depth, like very thoughtful breakdown of one of the greatest albums of all time. What was it like kind of bringing that story to life?
Well, I'd already interviewed Madlib for like an LA Weekly cover story, a year or two before that. And yeah, I think the assignment, I don't even remember what the assignment, I think it was just like, do you want to write about Mad Villain? I was like, yeah. And then like it ended up in the Pitchfork Review. I don't know if it was originally commissioned for Pitchfork Review. I think it wasn't, to be honest with you. I think they were like, you gave us like 7,000 words or whatever the fuck I turned in. And they're like, we can put it in the magazine. I was like, cool, thanks guys. Y'all are the best. Which I'm known to do, which is like, I'll be like, yeah, it's gonna be like 2,000 words, and it's like 14,000 words turned in 6 months later, and they're like, oh. But yeah, I mean, interviewing Madlib was kind of, you know, he's not exactly the most talkative person, but I already had some stuff, and he was gracious. You know, I interviewed, you know, Egon for that. Doom would not talk to me, which like I'm so sad about. Like, God knows, I wish that. I mean, like they tried, like allegedly. I mean, I think like they kept on hitting up Doom to talk to me, which is such a shame. Like you know, who knows? It's like so sad how that is. It's like, I wish that Doom had really done that. You know, I mean, he obviously did other interviews, but I'd like to think it could have added like another something to it.
Right.
And you know, and I talked to Jeff Jank, who was obviously a big part of it. I think I might have talked to Peanut Butter Wolf for it too, because it was at his house. I mean, they recorded that at the bomb shelter in Mount Washington, which is like a suburb of, or it's not a suburb, it's like a neighborhood in kind of northeast LA. And yeah, I mean, it was just one of those things where it's like, you know, you do a lot of interviews, you listen to the music a lot, and then you kind of like, you kind of have to like piece it together in your brain, like kind of like recreate how it maybe went down, and then sort of like, you know what I mean? It's like, I remember it started like, you know, I don't really remember. I recently reread it, I think, when Doom died, so it's a little more fresh in my memory. But like, dude, I didn't even remember writing half the shit. I mean, I don't remember writing any of the sentences that I wrote. But I just remember it's like, I think I was asking, and they were like, yeah, Doom came to LA with his mask, and like he was wearing the mask all the time. And then I was like, man, like that's so weird. Like he must have like checked the mask on the baggage, or like maybe it was a carry-on. You know what I mean? And it's like, and then you have to like think about it, and like you're like, oh wow, okay, like, well, Doom was just like, no one knew what he looked like. He was just Daniel Dumoulin, just like, you know, it's kind of overweight, balding, kind of like, you know, dude who like no one ever really like could recognize. Just like, imagine him, like, you know what I mean? Think about it. Like, Doom is like packing. Doom had to like pack a mask, like, but just for business trip. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, you're going to record, like, what? Like, you know what I mean? You need to bring the mask. And but like he did. So then you're like, and like I think it's like that's dedication to bring the, you know what I mean? But it's like then you're like, oh well, he was so committed to that mentality. It's like, of course he'd bring the mask. So then you kind of crack it a little bit, and you're like, okay, you know, and then you have this like, it's like kind of a mystery story, right? Because then like the Stones Throw guys are like, how can we get a hold of Doom? Madlib doesn't want to work with anybody but Doom. Okay, we got to get a hold of Doom. Egon knows this guy. Okay, so he knows this guy, and then we need to like track him down somehow, and you know, we'll get him out to Georgia. We'll get him out from Georgia, and it's just like it becomes like the series of things where you're just like, okay, it builds on itself, and then you kind of have a narrative, and then like, you know, once you have a narrative, that to me is the most important thing. I think that like, you know, people love stories. I mean, that's a fundamental component of humanity. I think really it's like, you know, we understand ourselves through stories. You know, we understand other people through stories, and it's like how to really tell that story rather than just be like, okay, well, like the synthesizers sound like this color and the lyrics are like this, and you know what I mean? Like I just never like was that appealing to me to be like, you know, and there were a bunch of like white critics that would just be like, oh well, you know, start comparing it to like, I mean, I'm guilty of that for sure, but like you had a bunch of critics that would just be like, it's compared to like this surrealist painter, and you're just like, ugh. Like I'd so much rather just be like, all right, what's the history? Because I'm like I was saying earlier, I'm like, I love history. Like I'm really interested in the history of things. Like I want to know more. I want to learn more. I don't want to read a fucking review and be like, all right, this guy just like fucking so masturbatory. We're just like, this is, or like, and I'm, to be honest with you, I'm never really that interested in like what Mad Villain meant to me. Like, I don't give a fuck what, you know what I mean? Like, I don't, like, who are you? I don't think I'm that, you know what I mean? But to be fair, sometimes that can be really interesting. It's just, it's very rare when it is. And I think as a writer, you have to be really cognizant of like, you know, when it is worthwhile to bring yourself in. You know, the
Right.
Grateful piece I did for Weiss like a few years ago, 6 years ago now, like, you know, that to me was like, I was like, I had these like deep loves and like that were somehow connected to the Grateful Dead, and like that was so much, so deeply connected, and I knew that so many other people must have too. So that like made sense to, you know, bring yourself in. But in general, I try not to bring myself in too much. Like hopefully in my books, if I ever write books, which I'm allegedly doing, soon, I think. Yeah, I'll probably bring myself in more. I think it's a better medium. You know, I always like, it's like, you ever read like Lester Bangs?
Yeah,
Yeah,
actually.
it's like one of those dudes where I'm like, yeah, like you're kind of interesting, but like I could have done with like 40% less of you. You know what I mean? It's like I didn't need you talking. It's like I went and like when I wrote that Post Malone piece, like a few years ago, I guess like 3 years ago now. It was
Mm-hmm.
years ago Halloween, I think. I think it was, yeah, it was that weekend. And but I remember like going back and reading like Lester Bangs' James Taylor's Mark for Death, like a famous like Lester Bangs piece. And I thought like I would be like, cool, I'm gonna like kind of like riff on this. And then I like reread it and I was like, dude, like nobody needs 4,000 words with the trogs before you start like dissing James Taylor. And I just like got it. And I was like, I just like threw it away halfway through. I was like, I don't fucking care. I'm just gonna write this fucking piece. But I like the idea of it. You know, like I was like, cool, well, Mark Post Malone for Death in your own way. But yeah, it's just like you have to kind of like, I used to read a lot more. Like I used to, when I first started reading pieces, like I used to, when I was younger, I'd be like really like nervous and I'd be like, okay, I need to like read this for inspiration. And, you know, I do that a lot. You know, I used to steal a little more. I mean, hopefully I'm stealing now more subconsciously. I'm sure I'm stealing, but you know, it you know, even the dumb children's book that I wrote, I shouldn't say dumb because it meant something to me, but like, you know, like I rewrote it this spring, just the intro. I added a prologue, and like in hindsight, like I was like, oh, you were kind of ripping off like this author I loved, Italo Calvino, and like I didn't realize I was ripping off Italica. You know what I mean? Like I just started doing that, and like I was like, okay, cool. Well, you probably are like, but you know what I mean? It's like good when you're like not consciously doing it. Like, and I think I used to more consciously do it. When I first started writing, I would be like, oh, well, and this is like when I was like 22, 23, I'd be like, oh, well, this is cool because this sounds like this person and this sounds like this person. And you're original because you're doing this blur of all of them. But then it's like, nah, you're really just the game. You know what I mean?
Basically.
It's like, no, you gotta like do your own thing,
Yeah, you got to figure that
that's
out.
you when it's interesting.
Right. Like I feel like, like I think that's cool you bring that up because like when like I feel like when most people start out writing, they're usually like they're just like a composite of all their influences. And I think that's fine, like like passion has to come from somewhere
Yeah,
type shit,
you gotta apprenticeship. Yeah, for sure.
Right, absolutely. But like as you start to get into it and get more seasoned, you start to develop your own style and noticing your own things and covering your own beats. And like that's how you get molded into somebody who can write thousands and thousands of words about Vanilla Ice and not have me be bored. Congratulations on the fucking Vanilla Ice interview, because like that's the most I've ever enjoyed reading anything about Vanilla Ice in my life.
Well,
Like,
I think it's
wow.
thank you. Yeah.
I'm man, come on. Like, nah, like it's a really fascinating story. And like I knew little bits and pieces, but just like, like I was an infant, like not to do age bullshit, but like I was an infant when Ice Baby was popping off. So like,
I mean, it was like the first, yeah, it was like, yeah, I was young too. I mean, but I was still a lot old, but like, yeah, it was not like, I wasn't like certainly out at the club, like listening to Vanilla Ice. Although
right.
my dad like did like, he like, I remember him telling me about it like months before, but like, it was just, that was one of those things where it was like, it was like, okay, Vanilla Ice, like, I kind of was thinking about it and I was like, he kind of got like, I think it was like, I forget what I was doing another story and I was like going through like looking up what things sold, and it was like that was like I don't know if it's Diamond, but it was like it sold so many copies, right? And I was like, Christ, I was like, damn, like the 30-year anniversary of that's coming up, and then I was just like, it's kind of weird. Is that Vanilla Ice like kind of like in hindsight, like probably like with all these whack white rappers now, like really whack white rappers. Like, I mean, I was like talking about this with Andrew Barber the other day, and like we were both like fucking around, like half serious. So like, man, it's too bad we were like not like 15 years younger, because like good, you don't even have to be good. I mean, I was not a good rapper. I'm sure Andrew wasn't a good rapper, but like these rappers suck. Like now you just have to have a vibe. Like back then you had good. Like I remember like rapping and I was like, you're not bad. But then I heard like Aesop Rock or something, right? Like, or like, I mean, forget Eminem because like that was his own thing. But like, I would have been more like in the model of an Aesop Rock, right? And I was like, well, you're not gonna be that good, so hang it up, dog. Like, you know what I mean? Like, like I was like, I don't think you have it to be as good as Aesop Rock. And I was like, if I don't have it to be as good as Aesop Rock, you know what I mean? Like, and it was like, I was like, you probably don't even have it to be as good as Idea. So like maybe
Damn.
Idea was kind of good though. But like, I mean, to be fair,
I liked Idea. I liked Idea.
Good. But RIP. I mean, but
sure.
But like I was like, you might have it to be better than MC Paul Barman. I think I could be better than him. And then I was like, that's not a high enough. That's not good enough for me,
Yeah, no.
And then, but maybe I should have done it because then I could have collaborated with Mike Eagle at one point. So it would have been, Mike would have been a fan. But yeah, it just was one of those things where I was like, damn, like Vanilla Ice. And I was like, man, like he kind of was from Dallas. And I was like, that's kind of weird that he's from Dallas. I love Dallas. And I was like, Dallas like always gets short shrift in conversations about hip hop. And then I was like, so weird that he's from Dallas. And then I was like, okay. And then I started like reading more. And I was like, it's so weird that he like was like on like the hood of Dallas. And I was like, man, like, and like this is like 1988, 87, right? Like he must have been good. Like, and then like, and it like, and then it just kind of went from there. I was like, and then I had the idea I really wanted to ground it in like Dallas. And like because he was independent too. Like he wasn't like a major, like he wasn't like he became a puppet of the major labels, but that wasn't how we started. Like he had an indie deal, you know what I mean? So it's like really like you're like Vanilla Ice actually was kind of like the first white rapper. He kind of did it himself. He was the only white boy in like a basically entirely black neighborhood. Like so at that time you had to be kind of good because nobody would have given you props at that point,
right? Especially not in the club type shit. Yeah,
no, like it was not like today. And I mean it's like Jack Harlow. It's like yeah, he's fine. Like no hate on Jack Harlow. Like but like it's like that's the guy, you know what I mean? Like this is the guy, like it just doesn't. I don't quite get it. I guess maybe I'm not supposed to, but yeah, it just made me kind of, and then it just went from there. And then I interviewed Vanilla Ice, and I was like, damn, Vanilla Ice is like a great interview. It took like 3 hours, which probably, as you could tell, I'm rambling, so that's probably partially why.
I mean, like, like I get it though, because like there's a lot of story to tell there, and you really just like took it in so many different directions. And I learned so much, and I walked away like, wow, like I've like I just never thought I would have felt that way about Vanilla Ice in my life. So like and like I really feel like that's the job. I feel like that's the point of a piece like that, like to really like give it the proper context, and even if you don't appreciate the music, to just like
Totally.
help
Well,
you get it.
yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I was saying. I mean, it's like kind of like the most small stakes version of it, but like I don't know. It's like that's like a risk in some like level. Like I mean, like I was like writing that piece for like 2.5 weeks, and like I mean, like shout out to my fucking editor Justin Sales at The Ringer, who's like the best editor and like a great writer too, and like just a awesome. And
Right.
he let me, you know what I mean? He let me like do it, but like at the same time, like I turned it and I was like, dude, like I'm giving you an 11,000 word Vanilla story. This is, I think I've lost my fucking mind, So that was
Yeah.
that.
Nah, I get it. And like, it's just and like considering like I love me a good long read, but like you just the fact that you managed to just put all that information in a way that just flowed that way was just really beautiful to me. And then, like and then like you look at something, like he's somebody that you obviously didn't like grow up with or like know like that, but you kind of gave us this like almost like brotherly sort of look into like who this man is and like what his music meant. And
Yeah,
then like
gotta empathize. Like, I mean, like maybe, like, I mean, that's like the, it's like again, like maybe I do sometimes too much, but it's like, I don't know. I was thinking about that, and it's just like just how like culture is so subjective on some level, or cultural perception, I should say, not culture, but
right.
cultural perception is so subjective. It's like, why did we? It's like, dude, he got it dirty. I mean, like they put him in the shiny suit. He blew up. He made a couple slick comments about Hammer. Made a couple like dumb white lies, pun not intended, and he then like was like, you're like, dude, and like you got the axe, like you had Jim Carrey in his prime, like just gutting you like a fucking fish on In Living Color at the height of its, I mean, like, dude, like how can anyone recover from that? Like Jim Carrey, like that guy was like, he was a career destroyer. So
Right.
like
And then no, sorry, what?
nothing. I was being stupid.
But but like then you take that type of thing over to something about the piece you wrote about your grandmother and about how she survived COVID. And like that's a whole like just you like that story really touched my heart to read, especially like as somebody who also had a family member go through COVID. So like it's like I read that piece before it happened, but like I kind of thought about it a little bit as I was like talking through with my person who I won't mention. But it was just like that was just so heartfelt. I wouldn't even call it heavy. It was just really heartfelt.
Thank you.
And to kind of like see like as familiar as I am with all your music writing and all the other writing you do, it's just like to see you kind of go that deep into yourself. We were just talking about like how it's how like how much of yourself to put in something, and like that's all you and your family.
Yeah,
Like
that was like I mean, like not to like be like coming off like I'm gassing my editors, because God knows I'm not trying to be like such a sycophant, but my editor there like is Mayor Roshan at LA Magazine, like really to really like he's one of the only editors I've had that like I gave him a first draft and it was good, and I was like, people will like this draft, and it was like timely because it was like right in the middle of when COVID was really fucking hitting LA hard. Like that was like when it was like everyone in LA had COVID. It was fucking crazy.
right.
And I was like, get it out in this issue, like my grandma, and then he's like, I want you to do something even more, like go deeper. You know what I mean? Like write more. Because I was like trying to hit a word count because it's for print. Go deeper. I'll publish whatever. They ended up having to cut a few hundred words, which kind of was frustrating, but whatever. I mean, it still came out well. I was happy with it. And but you sometimes like I think like I'm like that he's an example of like an editor that like is willing to take risks, and like I'm like, and like a lot of people have dismissed some of the LA Magazine stuff like with some validity for sure. Like he for instance, like they did a story on Ryan Adams recently, right? Ryan Adams obviously a pariah for I don't have inside information, but seems like pretty good reason, right?
Yeah.
Um, I believe that Ryan Adams, like, there's nothing that Ryan Adams has done that makes me believe he was like such a great person. But
Right.
he did they published a really even-handed piece on Ryan Adams and like what it's like to be, you know, a canceled person and trying to get his career back. They didn't pull any punches. They didn't write it as a glorified like, oh, Ryan Adams was wrong. It was just good journalism. And I think that's really a dying art now, where it's like, you know, I think it's the job of a journalist to really address like the knotty issues in society, you know, and it's like the Jesus and Miro thing that got to hear both sides is like, I mean, obviously it's like, it's a funny joke that has become a meme, but like and I think the trick is, right, it's like being a good thinker, right? Where it's like, yeah, you do have to give both sides, but it doesn't mean you have to agree with the other side. You just have to present both sides. For instance, like I just did a story. And look, my story is biased. I'll be the first one to admit it, about the DA. I mentioned it earlier. You know that
Yep.
we were going to do the first. You know, it was like, you know, it was almost a 4,000 word piece on the DA in California, and you know, I had been, you know, pretty vociferously advocating for George Gascon to be elected instead of Jackie Lacey, you know, due to my experience watching Draco kind of get run through the system and how like it just was a corrupt system that she was running. And, you know, he won, and immediately, you know, he has been public enemy number one for a collection of people that are mostly Republicans. There are some kind of independents and some like kind of more centrist Democrats, and, you know, who have been just mercilessly attacking him. They blame everything from homelessness to crime to, you know, like something happens in the city, it's the DA's fault. That's insane. Like, it's actually, no, it's like, first of all, it's crime happens, unfortunately, in a big city. We're never going to get that's a fact of human nature. Second of all, it's probably the criminal's fault, like, for doing the crime. Like, it's a personal decision. Like, they're, you know, third, like, it's maybe the police officer's job to stop it or like create, you know what I mean? Or like to like do, and then like the list goes on, whatever. Like, it's a stupid or even totem pole to create. I would never do that. I'm just giving an example, but like George Gascon gets blamed for everything in fucking LA now, which is, and like, he's a guy who's trying to do real criminal justice reform. You know, you can argue whether it's effective or not. Like, I mean, that's again a subjective take. I mean, I would say that, you know, the two DAs that the Ira Reiner and Gil Garcetti, who were the 90s LA DAs, who were very tough on crime guys, basically wrote an op-ed in the LA Times like last week or 2 weeks ago, being like, give him a chance. Like, you're making us less safe by obstructing his reforms. Like, these aren't that, you know, and, you know, so I was, but I guess my long-winded point is, you know, I wrote this story, and it would have been very easy for me, you know, this for theLAnd, and it would have been very easy for me to just only talk to George Gascon, to only talk to, you know, the woman in his office who actually was the wife of one of Draco's attorneys, or Draco's brother's attorneys, and who has been getting a lot of heat herself. You know, she's a Black woman from Inglewood, and she's dealt with a lot of like bullshit and racist heat. You know, and talking also to Melina Abdullah, the LA co-founder of Black Lives Matter. It would have been a really biased piece for me to only talk to them. Now, in my heart of hearts, and I think if you read the piece when it comes out, it's pretty obvious where my allegiances stand. You know what I mean? It's like I don't hide that. But I thought it was important to talk to one of the victims' rights advocate whose son got murdered. I thought it was important to talk to, even if I don't agree with her political take. I mean, I have a lot of compassion for her losing her son. I mean, it's tragic. You know, I talked to the head of the DA's association. I disagree 100% of what he was saying. I talked to the head of the recall attempt for George Gascon. You know, these are people I don't necessarily agree with politically for the most part. You know, the woman, actually, the victim's rights woman, was actually a Democrat, but I thought it was important to include their side in it, because I think it makes your point that much stronger to have like a degree of like this, like, you know, this like stereoscopic view to take everything in. And I think we lose that. I think we've lost that a little bit, as, you know, and because I would argue it's because of usually and often a right-wing manipulation, because there are not alternative publications anymore. Like, to read a story about the DA, you'd almost have to read it in the LA Times. You, in fact, you invariably would, or you might be able to read an LA Magazine, or, you know, and that again is a more of a mainstream publication. You know, it's not like it's a corporate-owned publication. I mean, great editor, and they do a lot of great work, but, you know, and the LA Times has to be the LA Times. The LA Times has to do the both sides thing. You know, I don't want my news slanted. Like, I want it down not necessarily down the middle politically, but I want it like, I want the facts. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I'll look to the op-eds and the commentary for my opinion stuff, you know? And but then there's nothing left if you're talking about LA local media. I mean, there's they have an LA podcast that's good, but I don't listen to that many podcasts. And like they have they'll have like Knock LA and LA Taco, which are amazing sites in LA, but they also don't do long form journalism as much. They do a little bit, but it's more, in the 2000 words and less. Because again, very valuable news outlets for the city, but they're also not necessarily alternative. One is, a unabashedly like they're connected to their progressive political nonprofit, and the other one is kind of just more of a general cultural publication. Like they're not really ideological in any way. theLAnd, I also would say we're not ideological, but theLAnd is something that's more, it's left in its politics, like without trying to sugarcoat that. It's up there. We'd never hide that, but you just don't get someone mixing reporting with opinion that much in the news when it's about like political stuff. I mean, you maybe the New Republic or something, but maybe the Nation, but beyond, and maybe sometimes the Atlantic, but there's just not that much of that on the local level. So, I mean, I think it's really, it's important, I think, to just do that in journalism as much as you can, even if it requires you to kind of have uncomfortable interviews with people and, with people you don't like, and you can interview them and be fair. You can just be honest. It's, people always respect you 9 out of 10 times if you're just honest, even if they don't agree with you.
Yeah, definitely. And like that really does like that does come through in a lot of what you do, because like whether it's you kind of like painting a picture of what was going on during Draco's court hearing, or if it's just you kind of like laying out the story of being with your grandmother when she was sick. Like there's just like you're thorough in that way. And like I do agree that it's really good to like I do agree that some of the most important and vital journalism that we have is extremely thorough. And even if it doesn't like present both sides, quote unquote, like it's at least like it like stuff at least offers enough context and history on whatever else it is to kind of make it a thing.
Offers both sides, where you like, okay, this is what someone would say that like, didn't like the album, or this is what, and here's why I think it's not true. You know what I mean? That's all you have to do, right, is like acknowledge it. So it's like you just cover your bases,
Right. Yeah, but like that's like the bare minimum shit. But
totally.
Like more often than not, like one and this is kind of sort of related, and like we're gonna wrap up here. I only got a couple more things to ask you, but like one thing, like outside of you as a writer, and outside, it's like outside of you as like your own writer who does your own shit wherever. Like one thing I love about you is just you have offered a platform to so many people, like whether that's musicians with POW Recordings, or just like up and coming writers with Passion of the Weiss, like just so many up and coming people who have never like worked in the field before and like just want a shot at something. And like you sit down and you work with people, and like that's I think that's just as vital as anything. And like I really do believe that POW, both the site and the label, are really like two of like the last bastions that like our kind of subset of people have to really be heard and to develop. And like when did it kind of dawn on you that that was a really important thing that you felt needed to happen?
I guess when like probably like in terms of the label side, which is a shorter answer, it was like, I started like I discovered Chester Watson,
Shout out to Chester.
It's amazing. Like when he was 16, he like sent me a video on Twitter, like very, I've said this a bunch of times, but like he was like, "You won't regret this." And I remember just being like high as fuck. And this must have been like, I mean, Chester's like 24 now, so it's like 8 years ago. It was a long fucking time ago. And just being like, yeah, it was like probably 13 or 14. And I just remember being like, damn, this is incredible. Like I was like, am I just high? And like I like the person next to me, I was like, is this great? And they're like, yeah. It's like, okay. And then I was like emailing with him, and I was like, we just covered. I think I did a blog post about him, and like, when he was emailing me, and like, and then I was like, yeah, and I was like, well, what do you want? Because he was like 17 or 18 at the time. I think he might have been 17. And he was like, yeah, I'd like to sign to like a label, right? So like I hit up a couple labels of people I know, and no one wanted to sign him. And I was like, I guess there aren't any really like, I mean, there are a few good indie rap labels, like Mellow is good, Closed Sessions does good
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Trying to think of like I'm gonna blank on like other Death Bomb does some bullshit that with rap sometimes. There's plenty of good ones I'm sure I'm forgetting. So sorry to people I'm forgetting. But yeah, like I just was like, I don't know, there's not that many indie rap labels, and I was like, certainly not ones that, I never really, I didn't envision it to be mostly rap. I mean, even though obviously it makes sense that it was mostly rap. I mean, I still would love to sign other artists in other genres. I just don't hear that much stuff where I'm like, damn, I would really love to work with that band or that group. We've only put out Pioneer 11, we had another singer that didn't quite put out more than one or two records with us, but yeah. And so I was like, oh, I wanted to do kind of a label of the stuff that I grew up like loving, like Stone's Throw, and even like the other indie labels who people don't consider indie labels, like No Limit, Death Row, Cash Money, like yeah, all of them really. I mean, hip hop is all independent labels, and like I just felt like the major labels do kind of stifle creativity in a lot of ways. And you have these fucking, I mean, I look definitely. I mean, I definitely am an A&R who plays an electric guitar, I suppose. But like, I like to think I'm not like that. I think I like contain multitudes, even though I've never played the electric guitar, or mountain climbed. But I am in the mountains right now, so I guess I could. But but yeah, and so I just like did that, and I was like, cool, I'm gonna do this as an art project, and just like if I don't lose money and like people like it. And then Chester's album like was Past Cloaks, and that did really well, and I was like, cool, okay, well this is something. I mean, and still like, dude, it's such an uphill fight. Like, I mean, I have no people like, you don't have distribution. I'm like, no, well, I don't have distribution because no major distributor has really wanted to take a chance on me. And to be honest with you, they don't really like, unless you're like Alchemist or Earl or like one of their like homies, they don't put you on playlists if you're independent. Like, you know what I mean? Like Gibbs did, but like you have to be big to get in. You know what I mean? No one's putting Fatboy Sharif on a playlist. Even, and which is fucked up because I'm like, damn, I heard him and I was like, this is incredible. Like
Right.
I heard Gabe Nandas for the first time like years and years ago via Chester, and I was like, he's great. All like even like someone like Wi-Fi God who's like popping and like has like we're putting on an album with him that's our next album, and like I don't like Wi-Fi God's not on like big playlists. Like what the fuck is wrong? And
Right.
one of these huge distributors that are like and people don't care because people don't they get like they only get what's fed to them, and that's unfortunate. And so I just I don't know, I'm trying to like, I would love POW to be able, I mean, I'm so far from ever being able to make a living off either the website or the label. I mean, so far. But that's why, I mean, I have to freelance and do a bunch of other things. But
Mm-hmm.
and to be honest with you, I don't even know if I'd ever want to. I think there's something kind of tainted about if you're like a label person that's living off of like hits. You have to have a hit. I never wanted to have like a mortgage where I was like, oh, I have to sign. You know what I mean? There were plenty of artists I'm sure I could have signed that would have been bigger than the ones I've had. But like, I really wanted to be like, I don't know. Like, it was one of those things where I was like, I don't want to like have to like email like people that like I like and respect and have worked with and like know me, and like my editors and colleagues, and be like, yeah, like here's like this new project from this white rapper that I know will be huge, but like I don't, you know what I mean? But like I don't like his music. And
Yeah.
so I really wanted to like love everything that I put out. And I think I can say, I mean, I don't think there's some albums that, some albums I like more, some albums I like a little less, but I love them all. Like I think all the artists on the label are great. Like I would like ride for them to the death, like as talents. So that makes me really, like but it's like it's an isolating world. So I really like, and I guess it's the same with the website. I mean, for me, like I started the website, I mean, God, like a million years ago now, 2005. It was like not even a music site. It was just like me like ranting about LA while I was writing a novel that never got published. And I was like, oh, I need a digital presence and blah, blah, blah. And that's, I mean, that's why the name is Passion the Weiss. Like I never would have chosen that name if I thought that it would have been like an actual thing that would be haunting me 16 years later. And I was a fucking kid, and but then I want to say it was like I think I like, it was like one of those things where it was like, okay, Martin Douglas was like like doing a Tumblr, and I was like, oh, would you ever want to write for me? And Zilla Rocca, same thing, another Real Notes guest.
Shout out
And
to both of them. They're great.
amazing. Yeah, like two of my best friends in the fucking world. And like those are like, like they're brothers at this point, and um but they they started doing stuff, which is actually really funny. I meant to tweet about this, but like Zilla got like, I was just interviewing Nas like a week ago, and sidetrack myself with a story and then go back. But I was just interviewing Nas, and like I didn't want to do it. I mean, I did want to do it because it's Nas, but like I also had like I got to start my book and like work on my book, and like I was like, I don't have time finishing my magazine. But I was like, they're like, they're like, I was able to negotiate a decent rate, and I was like, fuck it, it's Nas, dude, it's print. Like, come on, don't be a fucking
Yeah, like,
asshole. Like, you're gonna get to interview Nas. Like, you should fucking interview Nas. You've never done that. And I was like, cool, like, great, okay. So I'm like all set to do it. And I'm like, cool, I'm gonna like work really hard like this weekend, get all my stuff knocked out so I can do the Nas piece next week. And hear from the editor. And I'm like, what the fuck? I was like, I figured Nas people were probably just being like difficult. Like then it's gonna be one of the I'm sure you've been in there, like it's gonna be like Wednesday at 2 p.m. They're like, okay, can you interview him at Thursday at 8 a.m. tomorrow? And you're like, ugh. And they're like, fine. But so then like they're like, well, Nas doesn't want to do an interview with you and won't do an interview with you. And I was like, why? And they're like, this. And it's a fucking blog post that Zilla wrote in 2007, Passion of the Weiss, under the cause column, The Beat Generation. And it had my byline on it, but like underneath, where it's in italics. And it was only in my byline by Jeff Weiss up in the formatting thing because it like just it's so old that we didn't change bylines when we like switched like 10 years ago or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I didn't write that. By the way, he also has written why Nas is his favorite rapper on our site. Oh, here's a Pitchfork 10.0 I wrote about Illmatic. Like, Nas won't do it. And the post was about like why Jay was better than Nas. And I was like, you know what? Jay's still better than Nas. Because Nas,
yeah.
I was like, because you know what? I've written some sideways shit about Jay, but Jay through a back channel once really complimented me on a piece I wrote for LA Magazine about the forest fires, which is so fucking weird. But like, because like, Jay, you know what I mean? It's like Nas is not reading my fucking piece about the forest fires, but Jay sees all. Like, and I was like, that's cool. Like, that's dope. Jay-Z, you're a real one. Nas, you're still a real one. Who am I to say you're not? But that was some bullshit. And like I was like, Nas, you still made it was written in Illmatic, but come on. Anyway, so yeah, so I didn't get to do that because of Zilla, but I still, it's so funny. And but anyways, so yeah, I mean, those two started doing it, and I want to say it was around like there was like a second generation kind of cropped up like around like the early 2000s, like or not early 2010s to mid 2010s, and like like a bunch of writers came in and did some really great work. And then I guess it was really like around the time when all the magazines started like folding and like or like cutting back, and like to see someone like Alphonse kind of go from writing for the site to being like one of the best critics today. Yep. Jonah Bromwich does a lot of like big stories for that, like New York Times. He used to write for us constantly.
Yep.
Watching I mean, there's so many writers that I'm just gonna blank that, or Craig. I mean, Craig did like 2 pieces for us. I mean, right. We're the same age, but it's like I remember Craig. I mean, obviously he did the potholes in my blog thing, which was like really his like platform. But Craig did a couple stories for us, and then like Chase Serrano did a couple stories for us. You know what I mean? It's like those are some of the biggest writers in America right now.
Donna Chesman did a couple stories for you too. And,
Donna did like more than a couple. Yeah, I mean, Donna's the best. I mean, she and that like seeing Donna. That's a perfect example, right? Seeing Donna publish a book on Mac Miller, like, after, and like getting to publish Donna's first stories, really, I think, like, yeah, there you go. Donna, yeah, she's a gentlewoman and a scholar. And,
truly.
But yeah, like seeing her career take off. Yeah, and like it's unfortunate that there are not alt weeklies anymore, because that's where you learn to cut your teeth, and there are not really good daily. There's no. Either the Rochester newspaper doesn't have a music critic. Most city newspapers don't have a music critic. Maybe the Rochester one does. I doubt it. But like it watching everything die. I mean, really, like, I mean, I would kill to have somebody like help me more. And like, I mean, we have people helping me, but we need so much more help to really run the website and like edit and train other writers. Cause I'm like, dude, I'm fucking old. Like I got shit to do. I got to write these books. Like I've been, I gotta like hopefully write a TV show or a movie or something one day. We'll see. And then I'll come back on here. And I'll do. But yeah, it's just it just became one of those things where you're like, damn, like no one's really doing this, huh? Like no one is really teaching younger writers or like providing a platform and community for them. And like to be honest with you, that is also one of the things that has meant the most for me is like seeing like Jason Buford and like Harley Geffner and Alphonse Pierre like be really close friends. You know what I mean? Like fuck the shit. I mean, and Jason, perfect example, like is blowing up right now, and like I'm
Uh-huh.
so fucking happy. Nothing could make me happier. And what, but just watching them like become like lifelong, you know what I mean? Like I, watching people like become like actual real friends, and like those are like people that you have a deep connection with in life. I mean, it's honestly, I mean, it's corny as shit to say, but that's really what it's all about. Like it's about fostering that, and like that is unfortunately a dying thing in our society. I don't quite get it. So to be able to kind of help carry that on is as meaningful as probably any other professional like achievement I've had.
Right. I mean, it makes perfect sense because, like once again, like you and I met for the first time at the showcase in Brooklyn, maybe like a month ago at this point. And all those people who were there between Jason and Jade and Svets and, Anthony Malone and just like all these like wonderful people, and Alphonse who was there too, like all these wonderful people that I've like known and like been running next to, and like seeing, like I'm obviously not on POW yet, but like seeing y'all like you guys have, like POW has been inspiration since I found it in like 2015, son. Like speaking as somebody who's like a fan of what you do, and like how you help people and like the people that you trust. Like I know that if you trust them, they're probably worth trusting.
Yeah, I
Type
mean,
shit. Like
it's kind of like I try to keep it like a secret handshake type thing. We've never like done like open solicitations for writers for that reason, or it's like I don't know. I always like the if you know kind of, and it's like
same.
it never will be like the biggest website ever, but it's just like one of those things where it's like I don't know. Like my friend once described Stone's Throw as like he's like it's like an ethnic restaurant where you like walk past it and you see in there like everyone is of that ethnicity, so you know that the restaurant must be good, right? Because it's
Right.
not just like, it's not just like some gringo shit that they're just like, and I was like that's kind of
Facts.
like POW is like. I want it to be like that kind of thing where it's like, all right, well, it's like it might not be like a 5-star Michelin restaurant, but like the food is really good, and if you know that like you go in there and you see only chefs, or people that like love food, or like people that really like care about it and how the food is made and sourced and all that dumb shit.
Right. But like I think like I just think that that's, like you said, it's kind of rare. You don't really see writers. It's almost like how the label system doesn't really fucking like train artists in
So
that way anymore. Like they want you to come trained straight out the box
yeah,
type
so
shit. Like they want you with their own with like your own numbers and your own fans. Like you really, like from what I
yeah, take a risk. You know what I mean?
right.
Like I'm the artist. Sometimes you don't know who. Like I always say this. I was like, I don't know. You don't know what the fuck's gonna be in somebody's heart. Numbers only predict yesterday. They don't predict tomorrow. You know.
Mm,
They don't. It's like with athletes too. It's the same thing. It's like I always thought about myself as a writer. I was like, well, like I'm playing the long game here. Like I'm not. I'm never gonna be like the hottest. Like I've never been. And I've seen so many waves come and go. I mean, like I've seen so many websites be like the darling website or the darling Substack now, or like this person blew up on Twitter and like now they're getting like a book deal and whatever. Like I great. I mean, if that happened to be awesome, like cool. Like I wouldn't, but I always wanted to be like when all was said and done, like did you leave behind a body of work? That whole, and I mean, not to say that I have, because to be honest with you, I feel like I'm like maybe this is part of like hopefully why I feel like I'm just getting started. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I've like
mm-hmm.
I feel like it's taken me 20 years almost, or like 18, or the site started 16 years ago. I feel like it's taken me like 16 years to like get to like where I wanted to be when I was 25, or when I was 24 or whatever the fuck it was. 23, who the fuck knows? But it's like
Yeah.
it's just like when you had these like ideas, when you're a kid, I thought I'd be like published at 25. Like I thought I'd be like a famous novelist at 25, but like that's not the world we live in anymore. No one's looking for the next. I mean, they're like F. Scott Fitzgerald's not writing This Side of Paradise and getting popping, and like what would it be now? Who the fuck knows? I don't even know. Probably like a TikTok person or something.
Yeah. 18 Vino, rest in peace to 18 Vino. That was F. Scott Fitzgerald. Fuck rap is his fucking Great Gatsby, son. Like, like rest in peace to that kid because he was amazing. And I'm so sad he got cut down. But, I just think that's like, yeah, I agree. Like, sorry, I'm just trying to process everything you just said. Just like
It's 8 answers to one question. So
no, it's all good. I'm just like, I get it, like I'm younger than you, but I also feel like I've been in this game for like almost a decade now, and I feel like I'm just getting started. But like, like I remember just kind of being in my position at Watch Loud with my OG Jerry Barrow. Shout out to Jerry forever. He's the fucking best. And like Jerry and Max Weinstein, they put me onto your site, and I was like, this is the stuff that I love, and like to see you still doing this and like cultivating this space for people, for artists, for writers, and just like really just being like just killer at your craft, man. Like just like as a fan and as someone who's like, just thank you, like I don't know what else to say. Just thanks.
and your writing is excellent, and like it again, like obviously you haven't written for the site, but like knowing that like seeing, yeah, I don't know, I always felt like you were kind of like sort of one of those things where it's like kind of like, I mean, like how like Mobb Deep weren't technically in Wu-Tang, but like Raekwon and Ghost did a bunch of songs with them, you know what I mean? So it was like
Right.
so it's just like it, and like Nas, it was like kind of that little world. But like, yeah, I mean, seeing your success has been really happy, because it's like made me really happy, because it's important that that like people, like you've obviously put in your 10,000 hours, and like forgive me for using such a trite phrase, but you have done that, and like it's important that people like also who understand like the culture and hip hop as more than just music. And I'm not like saying necessarily in the four elements like kind of corny way, but like on a kind of just like a deeper level where you dig and you discover artists, and you think really deeply and critically about it. It's really important, because I feel there's a lot of people that I don't know, for whatever reason, like, I mean, it's just, we live in a cloud era, so people get into it, and who knows what the fuck. I mean, but I think it's all about being a part, I guess, of like the transmission. You know what I mean? It's like you have to help, because otherwise, like these bridges get cut down, and so it's
Right.
important, and like, obviously DJ Boot did an excellent job kind of helping you get to the place, and where you could get to this place, and Watch Loud.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. So it's all, it's important to keep this ecosystem alive. But I always think about journalism is pretty similar to like the food chain. You cut off one part of it, and it like things start to die. So
Yeah, absolutely. And you're like, we're all the bridge, and that's like as we move on, that's all I want to do. And just like, just like seeing people like you and Z and Jerry really kind of like put on for younger people in that way is just like, it's just nothing short of inspiring. So like,
yeah, you have to, because otherwise, like I've said that before, but like now they'd be like Gucci Mane or Jeezy. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not talking about their music. I'm just talking about like their approach to life. It's like,
yeah,
Gucci, like was right. Like Gucci put on every one of these young Atlanta rappers. I mean, he's older than I am. Like, you know what I mean? But he's still kind of relevant. So like, he's doing something right. Like he has that energy. Like you have to have that like youth. And it's like, and it's also like it's a symbiotic thing. It's like, I younger writers put you up on shit. Like you know what I mean? Like maybe like I don't know, like Harley. Like I don't like Chief Keef as much as Harley likes Chief Keef. I mean, I like Chief Keef, but you know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, like someone like is that obsessed with that. Okay, maybe that's because you're not of that generation, and like you start to just develop a deeper appreciation of things, and really understand kind of things in a more thorough level. So I've definitely like, I mean, I benefited a lot from like being able to like be around younger people. It's like, it's like Miles Davis. I mean, same thing, like one of the greatest artists of all time. It's like Miles Davis always would shift his band every 4 or 5 years, because you want that youthful energy. It like, you have to become a master, but like, in his instance, like he became a master, but like was able to kind of evolve because of like being around all these people that bring in different energy and ideas and perspective on things. And I think that's really important too.
right. And you're doing that, and like we need more of that. We always need more of that shit. So like, I don't have any more questions, and we've been talking for almost 3 hours. I didn't even look at the fucking clock. Like,
this is the odyssey of interviews.
yeah, you already know. Like this is like everything you see that we write. Like this is usually how long the shit goes sometimes. But like Jeff, man, I know you're like the busiest motherfucker on the planet, and you're working on a book that I can't wait to read. And just thank you for taking the time, and just
Yeah.
and just like thank you for all the things you've done. Like, yeah, man, like I can't say it enough. Just like thanks for being a real one, honestly.
You're welcome, and hopefully, if I ever stop becoming one, I'll expect you to tell me, like via text or DM first, though, not like publicly.
Nah.
Correct. But yeah, no, I appreciate that, and thanks for having me, and congratulations on everything, and yeah. And if you're reading this, theLAnd should probably be out. If you're not in LA, you can get an order online. It's like a DIY, nonprofit, community-oriented magazine that's about LA politics, food, entertainment, music, obviously. It's everything LA based, but it's also, I'd like to think, like, it's a fucking beautiful magazine. We have an amazing, brilliant creative director named Evan Solano, who designs it all, and it's kind of he makes it like an art piece, and you can buy it online at thelandmag.com, or just like I'm on Twitter being insufferable, so you can just find that. And yeah, it's free in LA too. So if you're around LA, if you find a copy, it's free. So we drop it off.
Right. Go pick up theLAnd. Support independent journalism. Support good writing. Support good ears. Support good hair. You got all of that shit. So like,
solidarity, sir. Real recognize real.
You already.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. Shout out to y'all for making it this far. And shout out to all the Black people listening too, because y'all really impeccable. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell a friend to come through next time. 1.